Thus began the drama of revenge of the granddaughter of one archduke. It was a very long and difficult path, because all sorts of things happened. The heroine even met the Demon King, but she was saved by the three brothers who supported her all the time. On this path, she again met a person dear to her heart. The girl was reminiscing about the past until the maid came and called her. The time had come, and the heroine was ready to take revenge on everyone after 500 years. The wanderer tried to convince the magicians that she was not the Demon King, but they did not listen to her. The magicians attacked the girl, and everything around disappeared for a second behind a white explosion. The history of this world of sword and magic began 500 years ago with a legend. One day, the Demon King declared an invasion to take away the rich land. People suffered, they united in battle, but their defeat was obvious. Then the hero received a divine revelation from the goddess Rosiante. Thus, the archmage Pamela Asenov was born. Together with other magicians, he sealed the evil Demon King. The leaderless demons were driven into the desert beyond the misty mountains. The mountains were surrounded by a barrier, and a winter mansion was built at the foot of the mountains for protection. The Asenov family guarded this place to the last drop of blood for the next 500 years. In the empire, even among small children, this legend was famous. However, the heroine knew that there was a gross error in this legend. In fact, it was not the Demon King that Archmage Pamela destroyed, but the heroine herself. Diana was deep in thought about her past life when her brother called her name. The Duke's eldest son, Lucas, was worried that the girl was in pain. They were soon joined by their second son, the elder of the twins, Baratheon, who had a more cheerful disposition. The youngest son, Shiza, was merciless even to his older brother. Diana reassured the boys by admitting that she was simply thinking about the family's great history. Despite their different characters, all the brothers loved the girl very much and were happy about her good health. They had no idea that at that moment Diana was thinking that she would soon make the whole family forget about laughter forever. When she was mistaken for the Demon King, she died at the hands of Pamela, but was reincarnated 500 years later. Ironically, she was reborn as a descendant of a great hero, the Duke's granddaughter, Diana Asenov. In her past life, she was the apprentice of an ordinary minor magician. She lived most of the time in hiding among the misty mountains with Master Caladrian. The guy was sure that they were incredibly lucky to live in such a quiet place with good air. However, Diana was worried that all sorts of animals and ferocious creatures lived in the misty mountains. Her master was the man who raised her, but the girl did not fully understand him. He said that he found a small child abandoned in the slums where he had wandered by chance. She cried so loudly that it irritated him, so he had a child even without a wife. The teacher complained every day, but taught the girl everything he knew. One day he suddenly fell ill and died, but managed to pass on his knowledge to the girl. He also taught her how to use weapons and made her an excellent swordsman. He also taught her magic and was perfect in everything, but very strict. The girl had to go through numerous hard training sessions where she was whipped. Thanks to this, she grew up to be a good mage who could also wield weapons. Diana found it surprising that if magic was used, even in the future, the effect of the medicine would be the same. The master confirmed and added that any object retains its shape and effect. Diana wanted to try the spell, but the teacher was afraid that her magic might not wear off. Last time it happened, because the girl simply forgot the spell to cancel it. The teacher suggested that she make a spell in her name. There is power in every name. You will never forget it, and the spell will be effective. All her life, the girl thought of the master as her parent. But because of their seclusion, she suspected that he was a malicious criminal. But she didn't care. He was the only person in this world dear to her. He taught her everything she knew and spent a lot of time with her. The master took care of the girl in his own way, and she hoped that she would continue to live quietly with him. But one day, in the misty mountains where Diana lived with her teacher, a commotion began. There were quite a few chatty little fairies living in that quiet area. They discussed among themselves rumors about the appearance of a ship full of treasure. They said that a few days ago, a heavenly ship sank not far from the shore. The little fairies were curious about what happened to the people on that ship. Diana thought that if she could get those treasures, she would be able to eat and do nothing all her life. She didn't understand why fairies kept coming to chat with her. There was a lot of useful information in these conversations, so the girl didn't mind. Diana noticed that the misty mountains had been in disarray lately. The fairies said that the Demon King had made this place his base and was throwing victory parties every day. Diana wasn't too worried, and hoped that everything would calm down soon. However, the demon parties continued every day and did not give anyone peace. After a month of virtually no sleep, Diana was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She wasn't going to take it anymore, so she went to the Demon King to demand an apology. The first thing the girl saw was a young man sitting on a throne in the company of a demon. Diana was an ordinary person who lost her peaceful life because of daily noisy parties. That's why she wanted the Demon King to be quieter or move his base to another location. These words amused the young man and made him smile. He found it funny that some human was attacking the Demon King. Diana suspected that words wouldn't work, but she hoped that she wouldn't have to fight. The girl wasn't worried, because she wasn't training just to kill time. After a short battle, she easily defeated the Demon King. Diana herself was amazed, because she had never won against her master. The Demon King stated that the girl was the first person to defeat him. He grabbed her hands and announced that from that moment on, Diana would be their new king. The girl was very surprised, because this was not what she wanted. From that moment on, the Demon King and his subordinates followed her. Diana was irritated because she didn't like them following her everywhere. The girl once again stated that she does not intend to become the Demon King. She even agreed to give in so that the Demon King could defeat her and return the title. However, the guy said that he did not dare attack his mistress, which irritated Diana even more. She was so engrossed in arguing with the demon that she stopped paying attention to her surroundings. It was at this moment that the girl met her death, because she was mistaken for the Demon King. She swore to herself that one day she would definitely return and take revenge on the hero. The girl simply could not allow herself to die because of such injustice. The next time she felt something, she felt like she was drowning. Diana was not going to give up and promised that she would definitely survive this time. A few weeks ago, she woke up in a luxurious room she had never seen before. Everything around was incredibly beautiful and completely different from her past life. At some point, the girl thought she heard the voices of people nearby. One of the young men wanted to find the conspirator who attacked the carriage. The second believed that it was one of Asenov's relatives. The attackers hoped to absorb the family after the Duke's death, but an heiress emerged. They hoped to find out everything by interrogating the mercenary they brought with them. The young man, who was a magician, wanted to conduct an interrogation because he was the only one who could resist the attacker. Diana heard only fragments of phrases and could not fully understand what they were talking about. The girl's body was like a wet rag, and her eyes did not open normally. As soon as she tried to move, the young men immediately noticed it and rushed to her bed. They were glad that the girl came to her senses. Only now Diana looked at the young people, and it seemed to her that they were sparkling. The girl had never seen such dazzlingly handsome men in her life. All three were worried about her well-being and were ready to help her in everything. The first thing the girl wanted to know was who they were and where she was. The atmosphere in the room suddenly changed, and all three boys were very surprised. The oldest of them apologized for the misunderstanding and introduced himself, calling himself Lucas. The second, middle brother and elder twin, was named Baratheon, and the youngest twin of their company was named Shisei. The boy then smiled and explained that all three of them were the girl's older brothers. Diana was very surprised and did not understand how she could have found herself in such a situation. The girl decided that the first thing she needed to do was put her memories in order. In this life, she was born into an ordinary family, lost her parents early, and was adopted. However, the couple who ran the small hotel in the village treated her terribly. Her stepfather scolded her for not doing her job well and did not want to waste food. He believed that such a lazy woman was unworthy of payment and was just an extra mouth to feed. He didn't understand where a girl with such an impudent look and such an eye color came from. In words, she was a daughter, but in reality, she was no different from a slave. Rumors reached the house that the magical barrier of the Misty Mountains had been weakened. Everyone thought that if the number of hired magicians increased, the hotels would be overcrowded with guests. Even the knights said that it was not easy to defeat demons, so the golden times began. The girl ran up to Diana and asked her to wash her face, because her face was dirty. She knew that the girl couldn't take a bath whenever she wanted, so she deliberately provoked her. She even gave her her worn-out clothes, which were still better. Diana didn't react in any way, which is why she got hit by her stepfather. He was angry that the girl was standing there and not working. The stepmother took care of a useless orphan who lost her parents at the hands of monsters. And for this, Diana didn't even know what gratitude was. so she disappointed them. In the evening, the girl realized that she was once again wearing her little sister's clothes. She was 13, and her 10-year-old younger sister's clothes hung loosely on her. Moreover, the shoes were in terrible condition and didn't even have insoles. The girl had the same purple eyes as her father, but she was despised for being different from others. She ate leftovers from visitors and slept in a small barn next to the stable. Her body was permeated with the smell of manure, but the girl did not stop dreaming. She dreamed that her parents came to pick her up, and now her life would get better. Linte's father and Carly's mother died protecting their daughter from a monster. If Diana followed her parents in a dream, they would smile widely and hug her. There she was happy, but in the cruel reality, she was bored and cried every day. Her horribly ordinary life suddenly changed when a knight appeared in the house. It all started with the girl washing the floor as usual when a new visitor entered. The handsome knight knelt down and took the girl by the hand, calling her by name. He was so dazzling that Diana couldn't even see him properly. The girl was stunned, because for the first time, a knight appeared among the hotel guests. She wondered what business the knight could have with such a pitiful orphan. The girl noticed that the young man had a clean face and nice clothes. Compared to him, she considered herself a wretched creature. The adoptive parents did not believe that such a noble man came here just because of rumors about the child. At that moment, Diana was only thinking about the terrible smell coming from her. The stepfather admitted that they were simply ashamed to show this girl anywhere. She always wore a skirt that was too short and dirty, and shoes with holes in them. Besides, her parents were ashamed of her unpleasant eye color. Diana was ready to burst into tears from these words, because she was hated in this house. She thought it would be better if the short skirt was longer and covered the dirty shoes. It seemed to her that there would be no fairy tale where something wonderful happened. However, the knight looked at the girl and admitted that the purple eyes were a distinctive mark. He added that he had been looking for Diana Asenov, the granddaughter of Archduke Asenov, for a very long time. For the first time in her life, Diana heard that there was something special in her eyes. This place was not at all suitable for her, so the knight received the duke's order and came to escort the lady home. He announced that the girl was a very important person, and she would soon understand it. Then the stepfather grabbed the girl. He said that no one can take her without his permission. He whispered in the girl's ear so that she would ask no one to take her away. The man added that if she only wanted to be elected again, she could do nothing. Although the stepfather spoke quietly, the knight heard him and became furious at these words. His reaction to the girl's spanking frightened her adoptive parents. They tried to convince the knight that he had simply heard things and that they had not hit anyone. However, the young man did not take long to figure things out, and with one blow pinned the man to the wall. Diana was stunned by this frightening physical force. After this, at the knight's request, the girl told where her parents often beat her. The young man was suspiciously calm as he walked away from the girl with a smile and headed towards his parents. Without any preamble, he smashed the man's head with a trough of water that Diana was going to use to wash the floor. In the next few minutes, the knight also beat his stepfather in the places the girl had indicated. The man asked him to stop, but he continued to hit him. Diana thought that her father was paying back many times over for beating her up until now. After the punishment was over, the knight smiled and suggested leaving the place. Diana followed after him, still not realizing what had just happened. In the carriage, the young man looked nothing like the man who had recently beaten his adoptive father. The girl was confused by what happened, because her life was turned upside down. It was the first time she had seen such a beautiful sky since her parents died. Thus, one fine day, the girl escaped from the hands of her adoptive parents. However, suddenly, their carriage was attacked and surrounded by magical energy. This time, they were attacked by bandits, and the knight went outside to protect his mistress, leaving the girl inside alone. During the battle with the attackers, an accident occurred, and Diana fell out of the carriage. The girl had just found a new life, and the next second, she was already flying off the cliff into the water. There, sinking to the bottom, she did not understand why there were no calm days in her life, and the next time she opened her eyes, she was already in this place. Because she fell into the water, memories from her past life came flooding back to her. She was then mistaken for the Demon King and died at the hands of the great hero. She had a lot of things she wanted to do, and he took away her precious future. Therefore, the girl was incredibly angry and was going to take revenge on him. She suddenly realized that now was the perfect time to take her revenge. Everything that happened in her past life was preserved in her head. Diana was going to destroy her offender with persistence and the magical knowledge received from the master. She found it surprising that in this life she had the same name as in the past. But the girl remembered the master's words that there is power in a name. She decided that this was a reward for her stupid death. Diana believed that God had taken pity on her and given her another chance. Although this was only her assumption, the girl was pleased with this conclusion. Baratheon was unhappy that his older brother did not allow him to introduce himself, so he approached the girl so that she could take a better look at him. Diana thought that this guy was like the bear she accidentally met in the forest. However, the bear turned out to be a funny guy who often liked to talk nonsense. For this, his younger and older brothers constantly punished and restrained him. Lucas admitted that they were all identified, so they are not siblings. From their words, Diana learned that the old man had gathered all the children in the house. They called the Duke, who was the girl's grandfather, the old man. Diana heard something like that at the hotel, but she wasn't sure if he was really her relative. However, Baratheon noted that with such eye color, no one needed other proof. The guy admitted that something had been bothering him recently, after which he lifted the girl high into the air. She noticed that Diana was too thin and needed to eat better. The brothers agreed that the girl looked like an elite, but abandoned puppy. Everyone agreed with this, but Diana was unhappy with this analogy. They believed that during the old man's absence, they needed to take care of business so that no one would think badly of them. Although the brothers constantly quarreled with each other, they were united in this. Diana didn't understand why people treated her so well. Baratheon promised that he would not necessarily show the baby her true origins. Diana was surprised by his words and did not understand what they were going to do with her next. The brothers promised to show them something, so Diana followed him. She was surprised when she saw the huge, sparkling room that was meant for her. The brothers noticed the girl's reaction and realized that she still had doubts. They explained that she looked very much like the old man, and they recognized her immediately. A Khan was sent to rescue the girl from the hands of her adoptive parents. The girl heard someone's cheerful voice and looked around, recognizing him. It belonged to the same knight who had taken her from the inn last time. Lucas explained that the guy was then tasked with protecting the girl and returning her home. He added that there is nothing wrong with being an intern. Besides, now Marina, the personal maid, took responsibility for the young mistress. The maid approached her mistress and formally introduced herself. Diana felt like she was in a dream, because now she had a home and so many loving people around her. The first thing the girl did was go to the bath and take it for the first time with roses. She enjoyed the warm water. It was real bliss after the hotel. Marina noticed the state of the lady's body after her stay in that house. After this, the girl had to try on a dress for the first time in her life. Khan and Marina looked puzzled when Diana first appeared before them. The girl could not eat normally at the hotel, so she was smaller than her peers. Nevertheless, she was glad that she was able to try on such beautiful clothes. She really liked the dress, and the fabric itself didn't rub against her skin. It was the dress she had long dreamed of, and a pleasant aroma emanated from her body. In addition, Marina's skillful hand movements carefully combed her hair. In such comfort and tranquility, the girl involuntarily felt sleepy. She completely forgot about her revenge on the magician who mistakenly killed an innocent man and lives in luxury. She realized that since she was the Duke's granddaughter, that hero was no longer alive. Therefore, the girl did not understand how she could take revenge on her offender. In addition, she retained her magical knowledge, but she no longer had the mana to use magic. The girl was going to do everything possible to get her magic back. Diana understood that the situation itself was not so bad. Next to her were Marina and the rest of the people who cared for her. So Diana decided that from tomorrow on, she would come up with a new plan for revenge. Diana admitted that she would like to see the mansion in which she is to live. Marina agreed to give her a tour, but asked her to wait a little first. After some time, the maid returned with a small basket decorated with a ribbon. She prepared black tea and sweets in it so that the girl could have a snack when she got hungry. She also added that she had put in a bunch of chocolate and cookies that her mistress liked. Marina and Khan loved the girl very much and were happy to have the opportunity to spend time with her. It looked like a stroll, but Diana's real goal was to explore enemy territory. She changed her strategy and now wanted to destroy the hero's family, who were enjoying wealth and fame. She wanted to pretend to be a good child and earn favor, but slowly ruin the family. In the past, the master said that there was a simple way to defeat the enemy. You need to hide your goals and abilities, and then catch your enemy off guard. The first thing you need to do is to learn everything about the enemy and the terrain. Diana was going to take care of the mansion and make sure that no one knew about her dark intentions. The girl sincerely enjoyed this best survey of the territory in the world. She went wherever she wanted, and Khan accompanied her everywhere. Around one of the turns, she came across the younger of the twin brothers. Shies didn't understand why the girl was walking around like that, and what happened to the clothes prepared for her. Diana explained that it was her, but the clothes just seemed too big for her. The guy had a handsome face, but at the same time his words were very repulsive. Even though the guy spoke dismissively, he looked like a dazzling picture. The clothes he was wearing seemed to have been made especially for him and fit him very well. Compared to this, Diana's own clothes were a different size and looked quite funny. The girl admitted that no one said that her appearance looked strange. Shies admitted that no one in this house except him would tell her such a thing. The brother did not understand what the girl ate to become like such a straw doll. Diana didn't think her size was a problem. She just wanted to shorten the sleeves. Only now did Shies notice the marks on her hands and understand why the brothers were worried about the girl. He picked up the baby in his arms and then placed her on his shoulder. At that moment, Diana felt that the youngest of the brothers had magical powers. She thought he was fragile, but in fact the guy turned out to be quite strong. Shies admitted that even he had enough strength to lift a little girl like Diana. Although she didn't say anything, everything could be read in her eyes. After this, the whole company went away, although Diana resisted. Soon the girl was forced to sit down and eat a bunch of sweets, with Shizi watching her. Diana didn't know who this magician was, but she considered him the most dangerous among the brothers. She didn't understand why the guy had brought her into a room with almost no furniture. Moreover, she was embarrassed by the fact that her brother continued to keep a close eye on her. Diana realized that she was very bored eating alone. She decided that she would seem like a good child if she shared her cookies. So she decided to offer him almond cookies, which she herself doesn't really like. It took her a while to convince Shies to try, and the knight watched and laughed. Shies stood his ground and believed that the girl should eat everything herself and not give it away. However, Diana was not going to back down and persistently persuaded the guy to join her. In the end, Diana decided to back down because her brother was adamant. She regretted it because it was a great opportunity to get rid of something she didn't like. Even though Shies won the argument, the girl looked like a disgruntled puppy. He was upset about what happened and thought that he had acted too harshly. Diana heard a loud sigh, and the next second, Shies bit a piece of cookie right out of her hand. The young man hoped that after this, the girl would be satisfied. The heroine froze for a moment, because the beautiful face approached too quickly. Shies admitted that he was worried because the girl was too thin. The Khan barely restrained himself from laughing at his master's uncharacteristic behavior. A couple of minutes later, a maid knocked on the door, and the maid brought in some beautiful clothes. Until recently, the empty room was almost completely filled with mannequins. Diana was surprised and did not understand what was happening around her. Shies carefully wiped the cookie crumbs from the corners of her mouth so that no one would catch a cold. This unusual caring behavior amazed all the servants because they knew the master's character. The guy noticed their reaction and immediately shouted at everyone not to mess around. He was known for his bad temper and harsh disposition, so the servants immediately returned to work. After this, Shizi sent Diana to change into new outfits. The girl didn't know why she needed more clothes, because she already had this dress. The young man refused to watch his little sister walk around in clothes that were the wrong size. Diana breathed a sigh of relief and realized that this was a very eccentric reason. However, now I finally understood the strange character of my younger brother. The first thing Shizi did was call the person in charge of trying on the outfits. He ordered Diana to be dressed in clothes that she would like. The girl only asked to finish quickly so she could return to her room and read a book. In fact, she was going to come up with a plan for revenge, but it was not destined to come true. Shies wanted to order at least 50 dresses, so they probably wouldn't be available before the evening. Diana was amazed by his persistence and imagined how much work lay ahead of her. After some time, the maid looked out of the room and called the master. She had just finished dressing Diana in her first new dress and wanted to show him the result. The young man liked the dress, but he believed that Diana should make the final choice herself. The girl was incredibly happy that she finally had her own beautiful outfits. Although Shais remained serious, he also demanded that the outfit be added to the shopping list. Diana was then dressed in other dresses, which were complemented by a yellow hat. Every time the girl liked the outfit, the brother immediately ordered to add it to the shopping list. Each outfit was incredibly bright and unusual, showcasing different styles. Some of them needed minimal edits, while others were perfect from the start. Some of the outfits were too ridiculous and uncomfortable to wear. Sometimes the brothers even had to give up their outfits because they were too gaudy. So Diana tried on new outfits until the evening, until she was exhausted. The girl even sighed with relief when she finally chose the last outfit. She liked this dress at first sight, because it looked like the very high fashion she dreamed of. Besides, there were sweets from the picture nearby, and Diana wanted to rest and eat as many of them as possible. The assistant advised the girl to first check the outfits for comfort, and only then buy them. Shais ordered the girl to walk to the chair, which irritated her by giving the command. The girl was so angry that she didn't notice how she tripped and almost fell. Shais held her in place, then ordered her to check her shoes and shorten the length of her skirt. Diana was so exhausted that she literally begged for a short break. After some time, the trying on of outfits finally ended, and the girl was able to sit down. Shais was still thinking about the dresses and was worried that he had ordered too few outfits. Diana was amazed that he still had the strength and interest in this matter. The young man did not understand why she was looking at him so strangely. Suddenly, the guy remembered that he liked what Diana had worn before. They couldn't afford the mansion yet, so he was going to bring them back and try on a few more outfits. The girl's suffering continued, and by the end of the day, she was literally dying of fatigue. But it was for the best, because it was fun to spend money this way. Moreover, she could use these expenses as another way to destroy the hero's family. After finishing all the fittings, Diana realized that she was very exhausted, but did not even cause any losses to the family. Khan wanted to cheer her up and believed that the girl was looking forward to finishing all the dresses. Shais limited himself to 60 outfits, but if he were in the Duke's place, he would have ordered more than 100 pieces. Diana was shocked by this news and hoped that she would never have to go through this again. Although she suspected that the Duke was not the easiest opponent, she was frightened by one of the rumors about him. She believed that he was as ruthless as the great hero who killed her. Unexpectedly, Khan noticed that the girl might be in pain. However, Diana admitted that she was worried that she had not yet met the Duke. The knight reassured her and informed her that the Duke had a special affection for his blood relatives. He heard that the master took great care of his son before his death. When Diana mentioned her father, she became sad, because she had bad memories. Khan was not aware of the details, but he knew one thing for sure. He was 100% sure that His Excellency did not kick out his son on purpose. The gentleman always missed his family very much and wandered everywhere in search of Madame Diana. The knight added that the Duke would return within a week and was already on his way home. Diana wondered what kind of person would pester her in a week. It's only been 6 days since Shais ordered a whopping 60 dresses. And it was on this day that a huge number of boxes of outfits were delivered to Diana's room. All the dresses were adjusted to her size, and Marina admired her mistress's appearance. The girl was frightened by the fact that every day the family was revealing itself to her from an increasingly terrible side. She had never seen so many orders completed in such a short time. She couldn't even comprehend how incredible the hero's family was. Suddenly, the brother burst into the room and jokingly called his sister. Marina was surprised by his appearance and reminded him that he should knock before entering. The middle brother was not distinguished by good manners, but still agreed to listen to her request. Although Diana understood perfectly well that the next time the guy would open the door again without a single word. He came to see his sister because he heard that she's ordered a bunch of outfits for her. Diana twirled around in front of him in her new dress to show it from all sides. The girl did not see the delight in her brother's eyes and decided that the dress did not suit her. However, the girl remembered Shees's words, that the outfit should please her first and foremost. So she noticed that even if someone doesn't like it, she doesn't care. Baratheon picked up the baby in his arms and admitted that she looked incredibly beautiful. He explained that he was a little unhappy, only because the dress was not bought by him. He was unhappy that his younger brother had beaten him to it and bought an outfit for their princess first. Diana decided that even if it was for the sake of a month, it would be better to appease him first. She noted that of the 3 brothers, Baratheon seemed to her to be the strongest. So the girl began to praise his endurance and strength to support her brother. The young man was pleased with her praise, and even blushed with embarrassment. Diana was amazed at how simple Baratheon was, how easy he could be used. Then Lucas entered the room, having come to visit little Diana. Baratheon was not pleased that his brother entered the ladies' room without knocking. Diana was simply amazed by his words, because just recently he himself had done the same. However, Marina defended her older brother and noticed that he knocked, but the boys simply did not hear. Lucas explained that everything was ready, so he came to report it. Baratheon looked incredibly excited and wanted to get things started as quickly as possible. They wanted to have a light picnic in the rose garden, as the flowers were in full bloom. Diana looked inside the basket and saw a huge variety of snacks. The girl's mouth began to water from such delicious food, which made her brothers happy. She admitted that any person in this house is ready to happily do everything to make the girl happy. The heroine was momentarily blinded by his beauty and kindness. Lucas seemed to her the kindest, most beautiful, most careful and thoughtful of the brothers. If Shees had to be watched out for because of his powers, then Lucas had to be watched out for at all times. It was only at this moment that Diana realized that they were going to have a picnic, just the three of them. She wondered why Shees didn't join them on their walk in the garden. Baratheon admitted that their younger brother was a bit busy at the moment, so he would be absent. Even though the guy was busy, Diana felt a little awkward going without someone on the team. She believed that good children do not abandon their friends, so she was proud of herself. Lucas wanted to hurry up and go to the garden quickly to look at the flowers. Baratheon noted that if they didn't go on a picnic, all the roses would soon wither. Diana knew that flowers couldn't wilt so quickly, so she assumed that something had happened. In the garden, she was amazed by the beauty of the plants that filled the entire space. Baratheon had no sense of beauty, so he could not fully appreciate the magnificence. While the boys were enjoying the roses, Lucas was busy preparing a picnic area. Soon, when the boys began to drink tea, Diana inquired how they had all been adopted by the Duke. She admitted that she was curious about how they all met and arrived at this house. Lucas explained that it wasn't classified information. It was just that the girl was the first to ask them about it. Baratheon added that the story of their adoption was so well known that everyone knew about it. Lucas confirmed that there was no nobleman who had not heard about it. He then explained that they were adopted 10 years ago, when he was 10 years old, and Baratheon and Shisa were 8. About 15 years ago, the magical barrier of the misty years caused problems. Because of this, demons appeared, and several villages were destroyed, including his own. He miraculously survived and ended up in an orphanage, where the Duke found him. Diana wondered why the Duke had chosen him among the many other children at the orphanage. Baratheon intervened in their conversation and explained that the Duke had chosen Lucas because of his abilities. Rumors had already started to spread about the boy's outstanding abilities, and the old man could not miss such an opportunity. Lucas is a genius who, once he sees something, will never forget it, so his skills were very useful. Diana was amazed that her brother could remember all the pages of a book just by seeing it once. Lucas asked his brother not to overpraise him, because he himself was a master of the sword. Diana was so shocked by this news that she could not contain her emotions. She understood perfectly well that this was the strongest swordsman who fought by pouring all his aura into the sword. Baratheon didn't understand why his title caused such a stir in the girl. In her past life, Diana shed tears in front of the master, because fencing was difficult for her. He constantly scolded her for not trying hard enough, and now Baratheon had that skill. Before this, Diana thought that the guy, although strong, was just a noisy blockhead. And now he had betrayed the image she had built for herself in her head. Baratheon didn't know what was happening to the girl, but asked her to calm down. Lucas was under the delusion that the two were having a lot of fun. Baratheon tried to make sure he was still her friend. At that moment, the girl thought about the fact that last time she felt a huge magical power from Shizi. As soon as she thought about her younger brother, he immediately appeared in the garden next to them. The girl was still in an excited state and did not immediately notice the tired appearance of the young man. He asked her not to pay attention to his condition, but asked what she wanted to ask. Without further ado, Diana asked why the Duke had installed it in his time. Lucas pointed his finger at the middle brother, hinting that this conversation started because of him. Before Diana had time to ask him a few more questions, the guy had already snapped his fingers. The next second, a magic circle formed right above the girl, from which roses began to rain down on her. Diana was amazed that Shisi could use magic without casting spells. Moreover, she felt a huge magical energy that no ordinary person could possess. The girl did not believe that such a thing was even possible in this world. Shais knew perfectly well what she was thinking about him, because it was all written on her face. At one time, he received the title of a sage, because he became a magician who reached a high level. He also graduated from the educational institution, the Magic Tower, with excellent grades. Diana didn't think that the boy's magical skills or knowledge were worse than hers. But for some reason, the barrier still weakened. Lucas asked his younger brother about what happened, but did not get a clear answer. Diana couldn't miss such a moment, and asked to tell her what was going on. However, the guys were not going to tell her about it, and noted that the little girl did not need to know such things. Diana only became angry because she was treated like a child. Baratheon reminded her that until she was 18, she was still a child, although he went too far. The girl was unhappy that, although the twins were different, they acted together in such matters. Diana hoped to learn the truth from Lucas, but the twins did not even let her approach him. She wondered what they were hiding, since they were keeping it a secret from her. Before she could even guess, Khan immediately ran up to them. He was so excited because they said that the Duke would be arriving soon. The man decided to return faster than expected because he heard this news. All the brothers also turned their attention to Diana, who was the culprit of this quick return. They looked closely at the girl and came to the conclusion that she began to look much better. Even Shais agreed with her brother, since she wasn't so little anymore. All the maids in the house were running around the mansion and trying to put it in perfect order. Even Diana was frightened by what was happening around her. She sought support from her maid Marina, because she did not know what to expect. The maid decided to get a new look and noticed that the dress she had bought suited her very well. Diana remembered Khan's words about the Duke being a man with a special idea of family. Now that she had put on a dress that fit her body exactly, everything changed. Right now, she could walk boldly, with her chest out, because she was not at all afraid. However, as soon as the girl went down and saw a huge line of servants, everything changed. Even though she was determined, she was now very nervous. Diana hid behind her older brother, who patted her on the head encouragingly. She noticed the mood of the servants, who were very frightened. Now the girl was afraid that the Duke would be angry because of the huge number of outfits that they bought for her. As soon as the man appeared on the mansion grounds, Lucas immediately stepped forward to greet him. He was immediately joined by his twin brothers, who were happy to see their guardian. Lucas carefully put his arm around the girl's shoulders and led her forward. Diana realized that right now, she was looking at a man who was a descendant of a great hero. The man was simply of incredible size, and what impressed her most were his purple eyes. Diana realized that she herself had the same eyes, and they were all very similar to her late father's eyes. The girl was frightened when the Duke spoke and addressed her for the first time. Although the man acted coldly, he ordered all the girl's favorite dishes to be added to the menu. When Diana learned that the old man was looking for her, she thought he would be decrepit. But he turned out to be much younger than she expected. And besides, he didn't look like a great hero. If it were the other way around, she would already be angry, not to mention a touching reunion. But even so, the girl found it suspicious how quiet it was around. At first, the Duke said nothing, but did nothing but eat to the sound of the knife and fork. The sound drove her crazy, and the realization that his invitation to dinner literally meant just sitting and eating. Diana realized that this couldn't go on any longer, so she decided to open her mouth first. She asked why her grandfather suddenly decided to find her after 13 years. Diana told him everything straight out, but his expression did not change. The Duke admitted that he had been looking for the girl, but simply could not find her. He explained that her father, who died shortly after leaving, did not want this. And then he told me that on the day of his coming of age, Linte wanted only one gift. Then the Duke declared that he was ready to give his beloved son everything he wanted. The guy just laughed and noted that a man shouldn't throw around such words. Then he admitted that he didn't need a country or anything expensive. He wanted to experience the world outside. Therefore, he asked to be allowed to live not as the heir to the duchy, but as a free man in the outside world. After this, the Duke fulfilled his request and never looked for his child again. Diana was impressed by this story, although not as much as she thought. The girl believed that the level of her son's idiocy was simply enormous. She understood that a normal father would have yelled at his heir for such requests. However, the Duke did not do this, although outwardly he seemed incredibly cold. The man added that a year ago, a traveling mercenary brought a letter and said that Linta asked him to do so. He immediately realized that this was the last letter from his son, from which he learned about his granddaughter. The mercenary apologized for being late, saying that he was delayed because of the demon and illness. As soon as he received the letter, he went to the village for the girl, but did not find her. Since then, he has traveled a long way and visited all the places until he found her in one of the hotels. The Duke thought for a moment, and then asked if the girl wanted freedom like her father. Diana realized that just thinking about it gave her goosebumps. She remembered the hellish days spent with her foster parents, who were like monsters. The Duke knew how she lived, so the girl had no desire to return to the outside world. The man was pleased with her answer and asked her to call him grandfather. At the same time, changes were taking place in the demon world. The previous demon king still resided in the castle and awaited news from his minions. After a long time, one of the demons reported that they had finally found their missing person. The guy immediately began throwing confetti and rejoicing at the appearance of Diana, who finally opened her eyes. However, his happiness was interrupted by a message from a servant that there was a problem. The assistant reported that the demon king's energy could be felt in the winter castle. The brother laughed uncontrollably when Diana told him that the Duke had asked to be called grandfather. The guy didn't doubt her words. He just didn't believe that the old man's attitude towards her was different. Diana noticed that something had happened because the workers at the mansion looked very busy. She asked her brother about this and learned from him that it was because of a meeting of high-ranking officials. The guy explained that once a year, a meeting of all the relatives of the family takes place in their house. All the heads of the direct and lateral lines gather, and the conversation will be about important family matters. In addition, it was necessary to discuss who would be the successor of the family, which surprised Diana. She thought there was no need to discuss it, because everything was clear anyway. The brother looked at her with suspicion, because it sounded as if the girl did not see any rival for herself. However, Diana explained that in her opinion, Lucas, as the eldest son, should be the successor. She added that her father had already died, so the next one had to be the eldest child. The brother was disappointed in the girl. He thought she was quite a smart little thing. He flicked her on the nose and ordered her to listen carefully to everything he told her. The guy explained that the Duke's own granddaughter could not even come close to competing with an adopted child who did not have a drop of family blood. And Diana herself was very young, and Lucas had been playing the role of successor since he came of age. Only now did the girl realize what had happened on the way to the mansion when she almost drowned. She realized that she was being attacked because she was the Duke's heir. She had enough of the experience of her past life, when she died for no reason, having received an unwanted position. Now she realized that she had almost repeated her own fate in this life. The girl was literally seething with anger until she remembered one positive aspect of her status. She realized that by becoming the Duke's successor, it would be easier for her to destroy the entire family. She can take the crown she never wanted, close her eyes and take her opportunity. The girl was only worried that Lucas might hate her because of this. She explained to her brother that she was worried that the guys had moved away from the position of successor because of her appearance. Diana knew that if she turned a genius like Lucas into her enemy, her plan could fail. However, in response to her statement, her brother only laughed, because his older brother would only be grateful. He explained that the conditions of inheritance included an unwanted marriage. There was talk that in order for Lucas to become a duke, he would need to marry a girl from his own line. In this way, the problem of pedigree will be solved automatically. At first glance, it all sounded reasonable, but deciding something about the future like this is terrible. Diana and all the brothers agreed that this was a terrible decision. The brother explained that being a nobleman meant making uncomfortable and unpleasant decisions. Suddenly, without any warning, Diana hit her brother in the face. He said something so clever that she thought someone had entered his body. The guy was upset that she considered him a complete idiot because he considered himself smart. However, he was unable to answer the question that the 13-year-old girl asked him to test him. Diana admitted that she saw it in a book, but in fact, in a past life, she studied this topic. Moreover, the girl was ready to prove her case if her brother did something stupid as punishment. She suggested that he write his name with his butt in front of all the high-ranking guests. Diana dared her brother and played on his emotions. She egged him on by saying that he was not confident in himself and therefore did not want to accept the bet. The brother gave in and said that he would rather die than show his insecurity. Diana was happy about this and wanted to ask the Khan to bring her a book from the library. The girl easily won the argument with her brother, and now she needed to meet Lucas to talk. Even though Baratheon said that the guy would be only glad, she wanted to personally check his reaction. Lucas was surprised by her unexpected appearance in his office. Diana explained that she was paying the boys back for teasing her in the rose garden. She heard that her elder brother had a lot to do and was very busy. Lucas immediately realized that the girl had been with Baratheon during the day and had clearly heard something. From Diana's sad face, the young man guessed that his assumption was correct. He decided to laugh, because he understood perfectly well how talkative their middle brother was. He was afraid that Lucas was worried about what happened, because he was going to be the successor ever since he was adopted. The older brother's face was impassive, so the heroine didn't know what he was thinking. According to the laws of this world, the successor of the Duke automatically becomes the junior Duke of the House of Asenov. It was easy to understand, simply by remembering the fact that the girl was attacked on the way. It was a place that everyone wanted, because the position held absolute power. In fact, the relatives on the sideline were also eager to get this position for themselves. They were going to marry their daughter to Lucas by any means necessary in order to enter the main line. However, the guy admitted that he was grateful, because he did not want to marry in such a way as to become a successor. Diana admitted that she heard the same thing from Baratheon, but she herself did not want to become the successor. She thought that Lucas was more suited for this position than a child like her, who didn't know anything. The girl wanted to check her brother's reaction, but he only smiled. He understood that the girl was speaking this way on purpose, relying on his position. Diana didn't know why the guy took it that way, but her strategy for winning favor had worked. He asked the girl to come to him, because she was clearly worried about the fact that everything happened so suddenly. She did the right thing by coming to him, instead of thinking about it alone. If a girl is not confident in herself, then it's okay, because her brothers will be there and help her. Diana didn't understand why people who weren't her biological family treated her well. She burst in as a surprise guest, but everyone was very kind to her, especially Lucas, who risked losing his job because of her appearance. The guy explained that, for the Duke, the girl was a precious treasure, and he was their savior, so they would follow him. Diana was amazed, because she heard such words for the first time since her birth. The girl could understand how Lucas felt, because she also had her master as her savior. She realized that she was becoming very attached to her brothers, but she had a goal and desire to destroy the family. She was afraid that she might gradually come over to the side of this beautiful world. The girl realized that once you become a successor, you never know when you will find yourself in danger. Therefore, she needs to train her body and restore the strength of her past life. She miraculously received a second life, and this time she had no intention of dying so easily. However, the girl understood that it was not enough for her to train like all ordinary people. She was going to use the master's mysterious pills to enhance her physical and mental strength. Thanks to these pills, she could increase her magical power in the shortest possible time. To do this, she needed to make these pills herself. So the girl looked into a herbal encyclopedia to remember what ingredients were needed. She leafed through the book until she came across the plant she needed. However, all that has been written about the plant is its name and approximate location. Diana realized that this information was not enough, because the continent was huge. The girl realized that finding the plant would be as difficult as finding a needle in a haystack. At one point, she even dreamed of becoming a bird to find him from the sky. Suddenly, she became curious about how the master even knew the recipe for this medicine and the method of magical training. Previously, she was looking for a book containing the knowledge she learned from the master. Most of the knowledge was unusual things that were not written about in books. Only now did the girl realize that the master was full of mysteries, because he rarely spoke about himself. From the very beginning, he spoke little and only what was necessary. So at some point, she suspected him of being a criminal, but he turned out to be a sage. There was no way to find out more about him now, because lost things never come back twice. The next morning, Marina reminded Diana that she was going to meet the youngest of her brothers. The girl was so immersed in her thoughts that she didn't even immediately realize what was being discussed. Only after this did she realize that she had become so engrossed in the search for a cure that she had completely forgotten about everything else. She was panicking because she might be late for the meeting. Moreover, she felt bad that she herself had suggested this meeting and then acted in this way. Shais valued time very much, so Diana was afraid to tell him about the cancellation of their meeting. She was so absorbed in her fear that she didn't notice that the guy was already standing next to her, reminding her that she was late. The girl was scared and tried to blame the guy for appearing in her room without knocking. However, Shise reminded her that he knocked so loudly, but she still didn't hear him. Diana realized that the guy was right, so she apologized to him, burning with shame. Shais didn't seem very angry, so he asked the girl why she wanted to see him. In fact, the reason Diana wanted to see her brother was because of the clothes. She would be an eyesore at the sideline meeting, so she wanted to look neat. People would be prejudiced against her, so Diana wanted to show them the greatness of the Duke's granddaughter. Diana was about to tell her brother about her request, but she noticed his strange appearance. There was something similar in the garden at the picnic, so she was worried that something was wrong with her brother. Shais admitted that he was just a little overtired lately. For a second, he forgot himself and admitted that the thing was that the man who had not been caught had quietly begun to speak. Diana asked who this person was, after which Shais came to his senses. He tried to pretend that nothing had happened, but it was too late. Diana realized that the guy couldn't really say that just by mistake. She realized that the words had escaped him unconsciously due to fatigue. When she first opened her eyes in this house, she heard that the leader who attacked her had been caught. Shais clearly used advanced magic for the interrogation, and it uses up a lot of mana. Diana grabbed her brother's hand and pulled him along with her, forcing him to stand up. The girl herself did not understand why Shais was so persistently trying to reveal the identity of the man who attacked her. When her brother was in such a state, she could not calmly talk about her outfit. So the girl waved her hand in front of the young man's face and declared that she would not let him go anywhere. She pointed to the bed and asked him to lie down, promising to voice her request only there. She reminded him that the guy had promised to help her today, and that was exactly what she asked for. Shais was perplexed and did not understand how this could be connected at all. Diana got tired of waiting for him and was the first to climb onto the bed to lure her brother. She patted the pillow next to her, causing the young man to join her. But instead of voicing her request, Diana just started singing a lullaby. The boy wanted to be indignant that he was no longer 3 years old, but he failed. Diana was incredibly serious when she ordered him to shut up or go back. Shais had no choice but to lie there and listen to his little sister sing a song to him. The guy was still worried about the girl's condition and the fact that she was not eating well enough. He admitted that he didn't like the fact that her body was in such a terrible state. Diana understood this perfectly well, but noticed that lately she had not looked so bad. So, while they were quietly talking and singing a lullaby, Diana didn't notice how the young man fell asleep. Marina, who came up soon after, admitted that this was the first time she had seen Shais fall asleep in front of another person. At that moment, Diana realized that the guy had opened up the boundaries for her that he had set for others. While he was sleeping, his face looked like that of a real angel. The girl was sincerely convinced that Shise was the most handsome man in the empire until he opened his mouth. She gently stroked the young man's disheveled hair, which made Marina smile. Diana thought it would be much better if the guy had such an angelic face, even at normal times. The maid admitted that she thought the relationship between the brother and sister was cute. She admitted that when Diana was around, the young man seemed completely different to her. Moreover, Lucas and Baratheon were also changing, and from the outside it was even more visible. Diana, apart from their appearance, knew nothing about her brothers. The workers could see a big difference. She was amazed that her mere appearance in this house had such an impact on its inhabitants. Marina explained that before the girl arrived, this mansion was a deserted and cold place. She added that everyone considered Diana to be a warm sun that shone and warmed their lives. A few days later, the heroine was happy that the meeting of relatives had finally begun. From the first day, she was very surprised by how many people came to their house. Marina explained that, by the will of the Duke, outsiders are rarely allowed into the Winter Palace. They have literally a few opportunities a year where someone else can get into the mansion. In many cases, when people who have an invitation come in groups, they ask to come in together. It was very ignorant, but it didn't mean they could just be kicked out. All visitors usually stayed in the annex at the far end of the mansion. Diana was pleased that, by order of the Duke, Outsiders were completely separated from the main building. At this meeting, Diana would attract attention as the successor, so she shouldn't go towards the annex just yet. The girl didn't mind, because she had no need to meet these people. However, she completely forgot that visitors can also break the rules. The young aristocrat saw the new black-haired girl and pretended to take her for a servant. Diana was struck by her rude tone, because the stranger was still a guest in this house. The girl did not intend to get involved in a conflict out of the blue, so she wanted to run away. From Marina, she learned that this was a lady from the sideline and often did not watch her language. The maid suggested that the girl might have simply gotten lost on the grounds of the mansion. Diana understood that the stranger knew who she was talking to and had come here on purpose. She obviously didn't want to see the real successor, so she showed up here to say nasty things to her. Diana wanted to get rid of all the girls, so she asked Marina to accompany the lost girl to her house. She asked me to convey that the guest was simply being sent to where she was originally supposed to be. The stranger was furious that she was just taking a walk, and some girls started throwing her out. Diana still refused to talk to the stranger directly and communicated through the maid. The stranger couldn't stand it and started screaming because Diana was ignoring her. She thought that this would provoke the new successor, but she attacked the wrong one. With her head held high, the heroine declared that humiliating others does not make anyone better. The stranger wanted to answer something else, but someone's hand covered her mouth and did not let her say anything. Her older sister apologized for the girl's behavior and asked her to forgive them for their rudeness. Diana also admitted that she acted like a child, so as not to look stupid. The girl introduced herself and thanked the hostess for her generosity. Kane thought that the heroine was a good person, and, unlike her sister, she had manners. In keeping with etiquette, Diana introduced herself in response to minimize conflict. However, she stated that she already knew this information. The girl had purple eyes, which can only be found in a direct descendant of the family. She added that there was talk among relatives about the girl's unexpected appearance. Kana added that many would like to meet Diana and get to know her. Now that she was also part of the family, she hoped to get along with her like a sister. Baratheon picked up the baby in his arms and noted that guests were not to approach the main building at will. Kana apologized to the young man and admitted that she accidentally got lost while walking to this place. However, the guy didn't believe her, because it was the stupidest excuse possible. He, still holding Diana in his arms, turned his back to the guests and walked away. Diana was too busy arguing with her brother to notice the strange expression on the girl's face. She hit the guy on the shoulders and demanded that he put her on the ground. The girl was already tired and did not understand why this guy's body was so hard. The brother did not understand why Diana was worried, because it was he who had given their guests a bad reception. Diana didn't understand why he was being so rude, since Kana had only said hello in a nice way. In response to her indignation, Baratheon only laughed heartily. He noticed that Diana didn't even know who she had just spoken to. All the heroine knew about this girl was her first and last name. Baratheon then explained that Kana was one of the most likely candidates for Lucas's bride. Her family is very strong. They pestered her brother and did all sorts of dirty tricks to make their daughter his bride. The young man didn't even want to go into details and remember what happened. Diana was amazed that there were times when even Baratheon fell silent. This made her even more scared. How terrible were the things that family did. The fact that Kana came to this meeting meant that the family had not yet given up. Suddenly, the brother pulled Diana very tightly towards him and hugged her very tightly. With his enormous strength, it seemed to the girl that she would stop breathing just a little bit more. The guy asked the girl not to go outside and to be very careful with strangers. Diana was frightened by his words because she did not think that there was a need for it. In addition, her brother asked her to avoid collisions with people from the sideline at all costs. Diana reminded that none of the Asenov family members run away or hide. Besides, Lucas told her about it, and she couldn't help but trust him. Baratheon realized that it was impossible for him to resist his older brother's words, so he said that uncle is best to run and hide in dangerous moments. After all, it's much better than being caught and dying. The young man forbade the girl to leave his chambers until the guests left. Because of this, she has been lazing around every day since then and just lying on the bed. Kana's words were not a lie, because Marina sent her requests for a meeting every day. The guests had their own reasons to worry, because the Duke's granddaughter suddenly appeared. The girl had no idea who she could meet and who she couldn't, so she refused everyone. As a result, it seemed that she listened to her brother's words. From constant idleness, her back was already hurting, and she was increasingly sleepy. Diana was standing at the window when a bright bird began to break into it. The girl shuddered in surprise and did not understand why the bird was so persistently trying to get to her. She opened the balcony and let the poor thing inside. The girl noticed that she was too fast for a bird and was behaving strangely. Suddenly, the bird spoke and greeted its king, whom it had not seen for a long time. At that moment, Diana felt that strange feeling that she had already forgotten. Only one creature in the entire world called her his king. It was that scoundrel who made her mistaken for the Demon King and killed her. So Diana tried to pretend that she hadn't heard anything and that no bird had told her anything. Then the bird reminded that because of the girl's powerful and beautiful magic, Blanche resigned from his post as the Demon King. Diana didn't want to hear this, so she grabbed the bird and threw it as far away from the house as possible. After that, she closed the balcony and drew the curtains, hoping that the bird would not return. However, a second later, Blanche tried to burst into the room again. He noticed that the girl's temperament had not changed, and she was the first one to throw him away like that. Diana pretended not to remember anything, but the demon already knew that she knew everything. He confessed that it was he who, with his abilities, awakened her and restored her memory. Blanche admitted that he went through many rituals to bring back his king. He barely managed to do this 13 years ago, and only recently was he able to awaken her memory. He never dreamed, even in his wildest dreams, that the king would be reborn as a descendant of this terrible family of magicians. However, after so many years, he finally achieved success. The demon was content with the fact that his king had finally returned to this world. The boy cast a spell and used his magic to restore his human body. He was pleased that his plan had worked, and the Demon King had returned to life. However, Blanche was a little embarrassed that he was so small now. He promised that in a few months, he would return to his previous appearance. The guy admitted that the magical barrier was so powerful that it took all his strength to get through it. Diana realized that she had previously been madly obsessed with him because he had spent 500 years for her to be reborn. She hoped that Blanche had long ago realized that she was not going to be the Demon King. In her past life, she died senselessly because of him, but it is thanks to him that she can live again. The girl realized that running away was not an option, so she wanted to make the most of the situation. She announced that she was giving her first order, which made the demon incredibly happy. She couldn't run away, but she could send the demon further away, then ordered him to return behind the barrier. Although Blanche was happy to carry out his mistress's orders, he admitted that it was a bit of a problem. He recalled that he used all his magic to pass through the barrier in one direction. Therefore, he had absolutely no strength left to go back. Diana realized that she was in a hopeless situation where she could do nothing. Then, the girl decided to use this to her advantage and gave a new order. She decided to combine business with pleasure and send the demon far away. So she showed him a medicinal plant and sent him to search for it on the northern continent. Diana knew that the plant was not easy to find, so during this time, Blanche would regain her strength to return home. Besides, she came to the Duke because he wanted to see her. According to rumors, the man was a terrible workaholic, so the girl had to wait until he was free. The brothers said that when they first entered the house, the old man sat in his study all day and worked. Khan and Marina suggested that the man had immersed himself in work to forget the sadness of losing his family. In fact, no one knew the reasons, so everyone was just making assumptions. Diana was surprised to realize that news of her clash with her relatives had already reached the Duke. She explained that one was a bully, the other was polite, but nothing serious happened. Grandfather explained that although the Oset family had strength, they were still a sideline. Diana believed that there was a huge difference in power between the direct and collateral lines that could not be overcome. The girl heard that Lucas was very upset about this family. This time they brought their 2 daughters, so they clearly haven't given up on their dream yet. After her words, the Duke was furious and asked who told about this. Diana didn't want to set up her middle brother, so as not to direct all of her grandfather's anger at him, so she tried to pretend that she had simply heard about it somewhere. The Duke said that she should not pay attention to such problems. He was glad that nothing happened, so he decided to go back to the reason they met. The Duke placed a box in front of the girl, in which lay the key to the treasury. Due to magic, he only reacts to family members and will open up as soon as the girl thinks about it. Diana was afraid to even imagine how many treasures this family kept. She felt joy in her soul, because this was the first privilege of being the successor to the family. The Duke knew what she was thinking, so he explained that it was a gift for her personally. Even if she does not become the successor, she can use the treasury without hesitation. The girl was upset that her grandfather believed that Lucas was more suitable as a successor. The man took a deep breath and asked her to listen to his words carefully. He suggested that the elders might ask the girl if she was worthy of becoming the successor. Moreover, they may even make her take a test to prove it. The elders support Lucas, so they won't back down so easily. The Duke promised to make his granddaughter his successor, but reminded her that no matter the outcome, it was not her fault. Diana knew it would be bad if rumors spread that her granddaughter had failed the test. Then they will point fingers at her, and the family will be ridiculed because of her. However, Diana did not consider this a problem, because she did not care what others thought of her. If Diana is worried about looking stupid, there is another way. Suddenly, the grandfather asked how the girl felt about Lucas. Diana thought that he wanted to marry her off to Lucas, and thus make him his successor. Grandpa really thought it was a good way if no one objected, although they were not related by blood. According to the family registry, they were related. Diana was delighted when she managed to convince the Duke of this and question his plan. She did not want to marry one of the brothers, so she promised to become the successor. She reminded him that if he failed the test, Lucas would have to marry for convenience, which he did not want. She promised to become the successor because she did not see anything difficult in this. She wanted to save Lucas from a marriage of convenience and win him over to her side. The girl convinced herself that this was a good enough reason to wear the ridiculous crown of the successor of a cursed family. The Duke was surprised by her words, but respected the girl's choice. And if this is her decision, then he even promised to make Lucas her adjutant during the test. Diana was delighted with this news, because having a genius as an adjutant was a great success. But what was even more joyful was the huge treasure trove to which she had the key. What was happening around was beyond the heroine's imagination. She noticed a diamond ring, which was not as luxurious as the rest of the jewelry. At first glance, there was an abundance of wealth here, as expected from a duke. The girl was examining the treasures when she noticed a huge chest in the corner. She was very surprised when she saw her own bag from her past life in it. Diana immediately rushed to her bag and began to examine it from all sides. The girl assumed that the great hero took her for himself after he killed her. She remembered that just that day the bag was with her in the forest. Diana remembered that the bag had been enchanted, meaning that the contents had been preserved. The first thing the girl did was slowly and precisely recite the spell to open the lock. She hoped that the master wouldn't mind her using his name. Diana put her hand in her bag and, rummaging through her things, took out a medallion. The necklace she took with her that day was a memento of the master. While the master was alive, the gemstone on this necklace was a transparent blue color. The girl hoped that one memory of the master would help her successfully carry out her revenge. The teacher had already helped her, because the medicines he had made were still in her dream. And since, thanks to magic, all the contents of the bag remained the same, then the properties of the pills should have been preserved. Diana took one and then lay down on the floor and waited for the magical energy to return. If anyone had seen it, they would have thought she had simply fallen asleep, but it was effective training. Now that the girl was looking at the treasures, she had to leave. Diana was happy that she had her magic back and could now begin to take revenge. However, as soon as she looked out of the treasury, the girl ran into all her brothers. They were worried about Diana, because she was stuck in the treasury for 3 whole days. Baratheon explained that they had turned the entire empire upside down to find their sister. Lucas was worried about the girl and hoped that nothing happened to her. Shies couldn't believe that she had spent 3 whole days in a row simply admiring the treasures. Diana herself only now found out that the training took longer than expected. Shies wanted to continue his questioning and demanded an answer from the girl. To appease everyone, Diana took out the gifts she had brought from the treasury. She gave each of the brothers something that might interest them. Grandpa said she could do whatever she wanted with these treasures. Diana hoped that this trick would work, and everyone would leave her alone. However, nothing worked out, and Shisi hit the girl for taking it so lightly. Diana immediately hid behind her older brother, hoping that she wouldn't get hit again. Shies noticed that he wouldn't stop scolding her so much just because he received a gift. Lucas asked the brothers to calm down, because the main thing was that they found their sister safe and sound. However, he explained to the girl that they had all been restless and worried these days. Although Diana didn't know that it would take 3 days to train, she felt sorry. Only now did the girl realize that it wasn't only her brothers who noticed her absence, so she asked what had happened at the elders' meeting during that time. The Duke appointed his granddaughter as his successor, and the elders decided to put her to the test. They wanted to know whether the girl was fit for this post or not. Shies calmed down a little and handed the girl a message with a test from the elders. The first thing they did was put a stack of documents in front of the girl that she needed to know. As Grandpa had promised, Lucas had to help her pass the elders' test. The guy was optimistic and promised to explain it in a way that would be easy for her to understand. Diana didn't know if her brother was excited about having to take on this role. However, he turned out to be an excellent teacher, and the girl learned the details of how territorial affairs were going. The Duke's biggest task is investment and work until death. They need to earn so much, given that the Duke has plenty of money due to the situation in the north. 500 years ago, after Dima's invasion, enormous damage was caused to the territory. As a result, the cost of expensive restoration fell on the shoulders of their families because they were entering their territory. Due to the poor environment, they have to buy all the resources they need to run their business. Besides, you never know when and how the cost of all resources will change. The cost of maintaining the magic tower and the Khan's nightly detachment was sponsored by the Duke. A lot of money was going away, so you had to earn so much in advance that you could deal with the blind problems. The elders gave money, and if the finances increased in 3 months, then Diana passed the test. The girl was amazed that Lucas considered 1 billion gold to be a small amount. Investments are hard to earn and can be lost in an instant, so it pays to think carefully. Lucas gave the girl a book of records of successful investments of previous dukes. Diana knew little about business, so she wanted to get an offer from an expert. This way, she could look at the offers and then invest in the business that looks the most attractive. The girl thought that since the Duke's granddaughter was looking for a business, there would be many interested parties, and she will need to carefully consider each offer to avoid scammers. Lucas promised to help the girl and said that the social season would begin by the end of the exam. This is an annual gathering of nobles in the capital to celebrate the founding of the country. Also at this time, there is a party hosted by the imperial family. Lucas guessed that Diana would definitely want to go to this event, so he advised the girl to ask her grandfather for permission. Participation is not mandatory, and they have missed the event for the past 7 years. But if Diana asks her grandfather, he will definitely allow her to participate. So Diana ran straight to the Duke and told him that she wanted to go to the capital for the social season. Without any delay, the Duke immediately approved this idea. Diana was even amazed at how easily the man agreed with her. It even seemed to her that he was doing this against his own will. However, the man would not tolerate compromise and insisted that they should go. Diana realized that the Duke never changed his mind. After finishing the exam, she could go to the capital. But there was one more question. She admitted that she had never learned the dances that would be performed at the reception before, so she and her grandfather agreed that she would need someone to teach her to dance. At that moment, Shies entered the Duke's office, intending to continue yesterday's report. From her grandfather's reaction, Diana guessed that he had found the ideal dance teacher. Shies himself was not delighted with this idea, but promised to do everything possible. The very next day, the guys started training, but a problem immediately arose. Shies repeated the same movements to the girl and tried to explain everything as clearly as possible. But Diana turned out to be a complete log and was completely unable to move. In her brother's eyes, she looked like an offended puppy whom he felt sorry for. The guy tried to smooth things over and explained that she was just very independent. This is usually an advantage, but during the dance, the couple needs to be in sync with each other. Diana noticed that the guy himself doesn't know how to concentrate on others, but he dances well. For this, she received a scolding from her brother, because she should have kept quiet at such moments. Her legs were hurting terribly from dancing, so the girl took off her shoes. The young man noticed the condition of her feet. He even suggested that next time she danced, she should stand on his feet and move with him. Still, Shies didn't think that the Duke would give permission for the girl to dance with another guy. Diana wanted to know more about this, but Baratheon burst into the room and distracted them. He couldn't believe that his rude younger brother would teach a girl to dance. Although Diana had become accustomed to their arguments, it was still difficult for her to listen to them every day. He was disappointed that he was not invited as a teacher. Shies realized that they would not be able to continue the lesson in such an environment, so he suggested ending it. Baratheon boasted that he understood all his brother's words. However, after a while, it dawned on him that this was not praise, but mockery. This time, it took him 10 seconds, which meant pretty good progress. Diana was already tired of the fact that these two quarreled with each other every time they met. She said goodbye and was about to go to her room to rest. However, Baratheon saw the terrible state of her legs and picked her up, ready to carry her anywhere. Diana originally wanted to go to the garden to get some fresh air. However, turning to the window, she saw Blanche, who had flown back to his king. The girl screamed to drown out the sounds of the bird, and no one else heard her. Without any explanation, she immediately screamed for the bird to fly into her room. However, the brothers decided that this cry referred to themselves. Shies didn't understand why she was yelling when she could have just calmly asked them. However, Diana was glad that she at least managed to avoid a confrontation with the demon. She said she wanted to sleep and kicked the brothers out, then let the demon in. She ordered him, under any circumstances, not to talk to Blanche in front of people. The guy was clearly not happy with this, but promised to carry out her order. Instead, he got her the flowers that the girl had asked him to find. He admitted that he didn't sleep at night for her sake and continued searching. They grew in great numbers on the southern side of the Misty Mountains, near the weakened magical barrier. From the demon's explanation, the girl realized that this was the place where she lived with the master. Thanks to Blanche's observations, she learned that there were so many flowers there that her room alone would not have been able to accommodate them all. If she makes pills out of this, she will be able to restore her powers to the same level as in her past life. The demon wondered if he could stay with the girl if he brought all the flowers. Suddenly, Diana became agitated and did not understand why the guy was even asking about this. Thanks to him, she learned that 13 years ago, the magical barrier was weakened due to black magic. It was necessary to break the barrier, since the magic that resurrected her affects the world beyond it. Diana realized that because of her, demons appeared and other people lost their lives and were injured. It was terrible for her to think that she had caused all these tragedies. She wanted to survive by following the master's will and not using force to harm other people. That's why when the hero attacked her, she didn't fight back. She would fight and win, but many people would bleed and die. The girl knew that instead of regretting what happened, it was better to spend time correcting mistakes. That's why she wanted to learn how to restore the barrier and help people. Blanche had no intention of dealing with the demons, but promised to follow orders if he could stay by her side. Diana realized she had no other choice, so she laid out her conditions. In front of other people, the demon will be in the form of a bird, and they will only talk in private. Blanche was pleased with this outcome and promised to fulfill all the conditions. Marina entered her mistress's room and saw a beautiful bird. The demon instantly turned into a bird, so Diana had to say that she had gotten herself a pet. In fact, she couldn't tell the truth without scaring anyone. From the girl's face, Diana guessed that the maid had come to her with good news. Marina really brought a huge number of investment proposals. Posting an ad was a great idea, so now the girl had a lot of options on how to increase her money. Among all the proposals, not a single one caught my eye that could be suitable for the origin of the test of the elders. In the morning, as soon as she opened her eyes, Diana immediately began to look through the proposals. There was no end to them, but they were all stupid, and she was tired of reading them. Blanche suggested that the girl entrust this work to her servants, but she believed that she had to pass the test herself to pave the way for her future. The girl thought that only in this case would she be valuable. Unexpectedly, while reading the next sentence, Diana was so surprised that she even jumped up. The demon was even frightened by how abruptly the girl stood up. The next letter said that long ago the sender's ancestors traveled across the continents. They were engaged in trade, and through this, they acquired a large fortune. One day, on the way back after the deal, the ship got caught in a storm and sank. The ship was loaded with huge profits from trades and family treasures. This incident ruined the family, and extracting wealth from the ship is a situation that one cannot even dream of. Lucas was very surprised when the girl chose this offer among all the possible ones. She had no particular reason for this. She just thought that searching for a treasure ship was interesting. She also felt sorry that family treasures were buried there, and she wanted to help. Smart Lucas was surprised by her answer and didn't even know what to say. He didn't believe that the girl had chosen this proposal only for these stupid reasons. In fact, Diana had her own thoughts on this matter. She remembered the conversation between the fairies from her past life, who were discussing the sunken ship. This happened exactly 500 years ago, and the names of the ships were the same. Diana was sure that this master's necklace brought her such luck. Lucas tried to persuade the girl to do some more research before starting work. However, Diana had already called Diego, who was supposed to tell the story of his family. The girl heard that the man was trying hard to restore family values. Everyone kicked Diego out, telling him to stop talking nonsense, but Diana was the first to believe him. The girl tried to convince her brother that everyone was being too cruel to the man. Several years ago, he found records of his ancestors' travels and pinpointed the location of the crash. Diana was surprised to hear that they could easily find the ship. She was very excited when she realized that there were records of the voyage. According to them, the ship contains ancient gold coins that were used as money at that time. The value of these coins, taking into account time, reaches 100 billion modern ones. If Diana invested 1 billion gold coins, Diego promised to give her half of the profit. Only now did the girl realize that every time they talked, Diego changed the name of the ship. She decided that due to caution, he had not yet received any investment. Looking at Lucas, she realized that her brother's doubts were at their peak. She believed that the Baron's stupidity had given them an opportunity, so she proposed a treaty. Diego asked out of happiness, and Lucas was horrified by this idea. Diana didn't just invite the Baron into the house for no reason, so she wanted to see the matter through to the end. The man burst into tears of happiness, because for the first time in his life he was believed. He was glad that thanks to his benefactress, he would be able to return his family values. He promised that he would definitely succeed in extracting the treasure and would give her a lot of money. Diana was only willing to make a deal if they split the amount into 10 parts, and she was given 8. If he doesn't get investment, the profit will be 0, and he won't find another sponsor. Diego understood this, but he thought that 8-2 was too much. The girl took pity on him and reduced her share to only 70%. She said that she was not going to give in anymore, so Diego immediately agreed. He understood that if he refused, he would not find investments anywhere else. Diana considered this a good deal, since she had originally intended to receive 70%. After this, she turned to her brother and asked him to prepare a contract. Lucas was surprised that the girl actually agreed to this proposal. Meanwhile, Kana's family was still in the extension of the Winter Mansion. Kana's father discovered through spies that Diana had begun to act. Recently, a girl posted an ad and invited a businessman to her mansion. Kana promised that her family had nothing to worry about, because Diana had invited the famous impoverished businessman, Baron Diego, to her house. The man was delighted by her stupidity and the fact that even Lucas could not dissuade her. They assumed that deep down, Lucas also had a claim to the Duke's place. Because if this is not the case, then Kana will be in a difficult position. She did all this in order to obtain the status she had dreamed of since childhood. Kana wanted to marry into the family of a hero with great power and rule over everyone. In this way, she would be able to pay off her debt to her own father. While Lucas was her fiancé, her father used his name as collateral and borrowed money. But suddenly, a granddaughter appeared, and the marriage agreement was cancelled. The Oset family, left with nothing but a huge debt, was now on the road to collapse. Kana was furious because it was hard for her, a child from the sidelines, to get to this place. She was offended that the girl from the direct line, who didn't even lift a finger, would get everything. A few days later, the demon was unhappy with the fact that he was given a cage as a home. Diana reminded him that in the presence of other people, he needed to keep quiet and pretend to be an ordinary bird. They were arguing so furiously that they barely heard someone approaching the room. Diana managed to grab the bird and close its beak before Lucas heard anything unnecessary. The brother came with good news from the businessman and confirmed the girl's assumption. A letter came from Baron Diego saying that he had found the ship. Diego was glad that thanks to Diana, his family's trading business was possible again. The girl was glad that their plan succeeded, and they were able to get a lot of treasure. Diego thought they could earn $200 billion, twice what he had originally expected. Diana was excited about how much of this money would be her own share. She was supposed to get 70%, which meant she would get about 140 billion gold. The girl was already imagining how she would bathe in gold coins and pass the test of the elders. Diego planned to put his heart and soul into the trading business and offered to continue the cooperation. He noted that if the girl needed help from his trading company, he was always ready to provide it. Diana had earned the money and passed the test. Now all she had to do was become the successor and spend it all. She was going to destroy the hero's family and make him shed bloody tears in the afterlife. Lucas noted that it would take time to cash in the gold coins, but they made a huge profit. They could live in peace, so Diana hoped that the elders would recognize her. Lucas noted that no one would dare not acknowledge her for such a huge achievement. He was worried because Diego was known as a swindler in high society. He always decided whether to invest based on the information written in the documents. But now he realized that there was something more precise than numbers and probability. Diana could not admit to him that she had made this decision based on certain information. She couldn't admit that she had deceived her brother, because he trusted her so much. Thanks to his sister, who looked at the situation from a different perspective, Lucas realized a lot. He realized that the girl really had the right to take the Duke's place. Although Diana felt a little awkward, she was glad that she had earned her brother's trust. Word of Diana's earnings spread, and she began to receive all sorts of offers. The girl achieved her goal and no longer thought about investments, so she doubted. There was no need to increase the amount of work, but the probationary period was not over yet. She had no choice but to pretend to be a diligent successor and review the proposals. Diana was doing just that when Kana found her in the garden. The girl had business with her, so she apologized for the unexpected meeting. She heard that Diana couldn't rest properly because she was all about work, so she suggested that they go to the auction house together to catch their breath. They were supposed to put something interesting on display there, and she already had an invitation. Diana immediately realized that she was not just suggesting to go watch the auction. Baratheon was not at all careless about this girl. Since she had come herself, Diana decided to take advantage of this opportunity. She wanted to play along with the girl and find out her hidden motive, so she agreed. Kana herself did not expect that she would be able to persuade the Duke's granddaughter so easily. On the day of the auction, they received the numbers. Although Diana thought they had just come to look, Kana explained to the girl how the auction works and how to choose items. Knight Khan and Baratheon went with her as guards and escorts. Diana immediately figured out the girl's secret reason for inviting her. Auctions can bring in a lot of money, but they can also cause huge losses. A 13-year-old child who has lived like a commoner cannot have an eye for good things. Kana was going to give Diana the wrong hint and make her spend the money she earned. Baratheon warned that if Diana bought any junk, she would get a scolding from Shies. However, the girl promised to buy amazing things and surprise everyone around. The next lot was a painting that was gaining popularity in the capital. Kana was disappointed because this was already the 20th item, and Diana still hadn't bought anything. She tried to advertise the painting to the Duke's granddaughter, but nothing came of it. Usually, the price of a painting would increase after the death of the artist, but this was not the case. Even an illiterate person knew what to do with the picture of someone who was now actively operating in the city. Kana grabbed Diana's hand and was about to lift it, but Baratheon expressed doubts. He wondered why the girl didn't buy the painting herself, since it was such a good investment. Since Kana advertised her like that, Diana raised the girl's hand, placing a bet for her. The host noticed this and asked if anyone wanted to outbid him. Nobody wanted it, so the landscape was sold to Kana for 500 million. The girl was just about to express her displeasure to Diana when she raised her hand again for the next lot. This continued several more times, and time after time, Kana won expensive items. After some time, the girl spent a huge amount of money and was broken. The next lot would be a tapestry with an inscription in an ancient language for a ridiculous price. It looked so cheap that absolutely no one wanted to buy it. However, thanks to the knowledge received from the master, Diana learned this language. She didn't learn it perfectly, but she easily recognized the language of the ancient kingdom of magic. She assumed that Lucas might be able to decipher these notes, so she raised her hand. The girl decided to try her luck and made a bet, turning out to be the only one willing to do so. Since no one outbid her, the tapestry went to Diana for only 5,000 gold. When they delivered it home, Shies assumed that Diana had bought some junk. However, the girl was sure that it was a masterpiece with an inscription in an ancient language. Shies pounced on the girl because he was sure that she once again believed in some nonsense. While the boys were arguing among themselves, Lucas decided to take a closer look at the inscriptions. He tried to figure out if it was really an ancient language or just scribbles. Still, he decided that he could actually understand the recordings, confirming Diana's guess. He had read books about ancient languages before, so he was sure that he had seen a similar text before. Diana was glad that she was able to buy something useful and prove her brothers right. Lucas realized that there were encrypted coordinates and some kind of inscription in front of him. In the last minutes of his life, someone reported that he left his relics in the indicated place because he wanted to pass them on to his ancestors. It was a treasure map that could lead to something useful. Lucas praised his little sister, noting that she had excellent taste in things. Shai suspected that the girl might have known about this in advance, but he didn't want to believe it. He decided to pass this information to the magic tower and begin deciphering the coordinates. Diana was pleased, because soon she would be able to ruin the family and take all the treasures for herself. She was shocked, because Lucas analyzed the coordinates in one day and prepared the necessary documents. Permission for excavation was obtained. All authorities were informed, and it was possible to move forward. Diana realized that she wouldn't be surprised if one day it turned out that Lucas was an alien. There were only a few elders left before the end of the trial, and this could strengthen Diana's position. He asked the girl not to worry, because he and the scum would definitely support her. Because of his words, the girl felt a pang of conscience and was afraid that she might give in. Even if they were adopted and not biological, they were still descendants of heroes. Soon the day of the excavation team's departure was left, and everyone was getting ready. Diana went out to see Shisov, but he was nowhere to be seen. Soon the brother appeared in full dress uniform on the square, ready to set off. Diana was taken aback by his magnificent clothes, which were inappropriate for the trip. Over the years, Shais has not changed and has always looked stunning. Baratheon egged on his brother, believing that he was going to look for a bride and not to excavate. Even though they were arguing, Shais understood that his brother was worried about him. Both of them didn't want to admit that they really liked each other. Diana was already tired of their constant bickering, so she waited for it to end. It was only with the appearance of Lucas that the two calmed down a little. The boy wanted the younger one to be careful, because demons could appear at any moment. The probability was low, because the demons appeared in the northern regions, and they were going to the center. Shais was right, but Lucas thought it wouldn't hurt to be careful. Diana asked her brother not to overdo it, and not to put too much effort into searching for the relic. The young man noticed that this was a very strange parting word. Diana was embarrassed, and admitted that if he died, there would be no one to teach her to dance. She sincerely wanted her brother to return home safe and sound as soon as possible. The young man was impressed by her words, so he turned away to hide his embarrassment. Instead, he told the girl to start counting her fingers one by one. Shais rushed off, and Lucas explained that he had just promised to finish the job in 10 days. Although it was strange, this was his way of expressing his affection. Diana didn't understand why the kingdom of magic was destroyed. She felt that it was not typical for Shisei to show interest in this matter. Diana was homeschooled, so she didn't even know such an obvious story. Lucas told her about the situation in the north, but forgot to mention other knowledge. Riam is an important country that was related to the imperial family. Lucas promised to provide the girl with an excellent teacher. Diana could not even imagine that her teacher would turn out to be the Khan's brother. Jedin looked very much like the knight in appearance. One could immediately tell that they were related. All this time, Khan stood to the side and panicked, hoping that his brother would not put him in an awkward position. Diana knew that her teacher usually conducted research in the magic tower. He studied the history and technology of magic, its use, and was very busy. So he didn't want to waste time and was going to emphasize the main points and explain everything briefly. He offered to look at the relationship between the ancient kingdom of Riam and the Empire. It was said that Riam disappeared after a collision with a meteorite, but everything was shrouded in mystery. If the coordinates are correct, they will be able to find the kingdom's artifacts and make a historic discovery. After this, the teacher moved on to tell the story of the Kirin Empire. The ancestor used great power, united the continents, and built the current empire. He had incredible power, which he received from the dragon. Everything seemed new to the girl, because the master didn't tell her about it. She was very surprised when she learned that the dragon's power was called Caladrian. The teacher continued his story, but Diana stopped him and asked him to explain more precisely. She was surprised that Caladrian referred to the dragon's power and not a human's name. Anyone with that name would already be in prison. The imperial family tried to hide the dragon's power by any means possible. The force was so powerful that it would be a sin to call a person by this name. According to the original records, Caladrian meant the primordial dragon. Therefore, in some sources, the ancestor of the imperial family did not acquire the power of a dragon, but met a dragon. Diana couldn't believe that her master was a dragon. Moreover, it seemed strange to her that such a creature could simply get sick and die. She wondered what her master's true identity was. There were still 3 days left until the end of the campaign, but there was no news from Shize. Diana was still trying to make sense of the information she had learned from her teacher. She was worried about not hearing from Shize, but she couldn't even talk to anyone. The demon saw the girl's condition and suggested that she simply destroy all the people in the world. Diana was different from demons and had no interest in destroying or conquering the world. At that moment, the girl remembered that she was simply trying to resolve one specific problem. She looked at the demon again and only now realized that the solution to her problem was near. She ordered the demon to fly immediately and see what was happening to her brother. Although Blanche was upset, he could not disobey the orders of his king. Diana was worried that the dragon's secret would be revealed if the excavations were successful. If the artifacts are found, there is a chance to learn new truth about her master. On the evening of the last day of the Elder's test, Marina burst into her mistress's room with news. Diana was very worried about her brother's condition and hurried to see him. She was so worried that she started shaking Shize, hoping to find out everything. The guy was in a bad condition because he used teleportation to get back faster. While she admired her brother's strength, she understood the consequences of the transfer. Shize asked for peace because he was exhausted from these adventures. In any case, he realized that the girl was not waiting for him, but for the results of the study. He took something out of his inside pocket and threw it to the girl. Diana opened her hands and saw a small coin in her palms. Shize said that this was a legacy of the Riam kingdom that could no longer be made in their time. Engraved on it was an ancient magical formula, which was now being studied in the tower. Barton was glad that the girl had found a real treasure for the second time. Even Shize noticed that the girl had a great sense of where she could make a profit. Although there were some problems during the search, everything was resolved successfully. Shize explained that they became aware of the changed location when a bird suddenly appeared and told them. Diana assumed it might be a demon, but accidentally gave herself away. The brothers turned their attention to the girl and noticed that this bird looked very familiar. Only now did Diana notice that the demon had returned and was sitting right on her shoulder. Lucas assumed that his sister had raised the bird that had given them the location. Baratheon believed that it was a bluebird that brought good luck. Diana didn't understand why Blanche had given the coordinates, since she had only asked him to keep an eye on her. Now the girl was in his debt, even though she hadn't expected it. Around the same time, a huge scandal took place in the Winter Mansion. Kanu's father hit her for failing to stop Diana from succeeding. The girl promised to put everything back in its place, because everything was going well before the arrival of her granddaughter. The man was disappointed with everything, starting with the failed attack on the carriage. He stated that next time Kana should finally deal with this girl. On the day the results of the Elder's exam were announced, Diana was beaming with happiness. Marina and Khan stayed outside to wait for her, promising to meet her later. The girl was about to enter the office when she saw a demon in the pocket of her dress. She was afraid that the situation from her past life would repeat itself, so she scolded the bird. She couldn't attract too much attention to herself, so she gave in. As soon as Diana grabbed the handle and tried to enter, she was immediately surrounded by magic circles. The Khan tried to save his mistress, but did not have time to do anything. At that very second, Diana began to fall, and her flight did not end. The demon assumed that they had accidentally entered the zero-gravity room. Diana didn't know what to do, so she ordered the demon to come up with something. At that very second, he returned to his human body and picked her up in his arms. Blanche wanted to land gently, but instead, they just fell to the floor. Diana was unhappy because due to its small size, the demon did not have full power. She heard strange sounds that could have belonged to some people. At the same time, it became known in the Winter Mansion that a girl had gone missing. The most powerful magicians tried to break the spells, but nothing worked. The Duke listened to this abuse, after which he simply turned around and walked away. He got tired of trying to solve the problem, so he went to the culprit. Everyone was extremely surprised, because it was not usually his habit to act directly. Baratheon knew they had problems out of nowhere. Diana thought she heard a voice, so she decided to check it out. She saw a tied-up man behind the boxes and immediately rushed to help him. Removing the bag from her head, she saw that in front of her was a representative of another race. The girl immediately tore the tissues to try to stop the bleeding. The stranger was worried that because of her, Diana might ruin such a beautiful dress. She was afraid that she would not be able to return home again because they would soon be sold. Diana knew that this was illegal in the Empire, but she didn't have time to find out anything. The seller and the buyer entered the chamber to inspect the goods for sale. There were 5 men there in total, so Diana wasn't going to get into trouble. The kidnappers noticed her and decided that she would be a great addition. Then they noticed that the second girl had untied the ropes. They hit her so that she could no longer move or resist. This caused memories of the past to come to Diana's mind. She was incredibly angry at the seller's order to put them in a box and send them on the ship. The girl distracted the kidnappers and ordered the demon to attack them. A moment later, a heavy box fell on one of the men. He thought that his own partner was attacking him, so he started a fight. While the two were busy, Blanche quietly attacked the third man. In this way, he set the kidnappers against each other in order to distract them. Their boss didn't immediately understand what was going on. At this time, a meeting of elders was taking place, where the kidnapping of Diana was discussed. All this time, the Duke just sat silently and watched what was happening. After that, he gave everyone 10 minutes to identify the culprit. He promised to cut off one hand from each of those present if he was not found. He threatened to cut off a limb every 10 minutes until the problem was solved. The elders tried to talk to him, but the Duke reminded them that there were 9 minutes left. One of the aristocrats could not stand it and decided to leave the hall. However, when he grabbed the handle, he was unable to open the door. The Knights of the Mist guarded this place, and without the Duke's permission, no one could leave. The aristocrat returned to his place, and confusion began as everyone suspected each other. Only Kana's father behaved rather quietly and thought about how he could get out of it. When 10 minutes had passed, the Duke rose from his seat and grabbed his weapon. At that moment, Kana burst into the meeting and asked him to stop. She drew attention to herself and announced that her father was the culprit of the kidnapping. He rose from his seat and tried to refute the accusations, but was stopped. As evidence, Kana promised to tell where Diana was. Meanwhile, the kidnappers tried to stuff the girls into boxes. They were worried that some aristocrat with an unusual eye color had appeared in the dungeon. However, the boss didn't care. He just wanted to do his job well. Suddenly, the entire chamber began to shake, as if there was an earthquake outside. One of the guys rushed to check, but didn't have time, because the door shattered into pieces. Baratheon appeared on the threshold, armed and ready to deal with the enemies. The kidnappers immediately realized that they were dealing with a swordmaster. They were so distracted by him that they did not notice the appearance of another enemy. Shies used teleportation and magic power to appear behind the group. He ordered the kidnappers to immediately lay down their arms and release the children. One of the men grabbed Diana tightly to try to cover himself with her. However, he dropped his dagger in fear when he saw who entered the cell. The kidnappers knew their days were numbered when they saw the Duke. As the man reached for his baby, Shishi noticed strange blue feathers. He had seen them before and wanted to ask Diana where they came from in the cell. However, he noticed her torn dress and quickly turned his attention to it. The mere mention of bleeding made Shies become enraged, and he grabbed the girl. Baratheon immediately called for doctors, and the rest of the relatives remained to deal with the kidnappers. Diana's first act after her release was to take her place as the Duke's successor. However, her first affairs were so trivial that the girl became upset. She made so much money, but she was never trusted to do anything serious. The girl wanted to ruin the family, but with such orders it was impossible. Lucas reminded her that she was only 13, so she should learn gradually. The guy admitted that the Duke demands more from the family than from anyone else. Diana passed the tests, but did not complete the entire process as perfectly as they wanted. Nobody knew the truth, so everyone thought she was just lucky. They didn't even imagine that she solved the problem with the help of her knowledge and experience. The girl was upset that she could not tell the truth and receive the recognition she deserved. Shies saw Diana and reminded her that she was putting her brother in an awkward position. The boy brought a suitable job for the future Duke, who had no experience. Since Diana became the successor, she needed to show her face in social circles, so the girl could go to a party where she could show off her dancing skills. Lucas was glad that the girl's mood had improved a little. Kana said she abandoned her family to save Diana from her relatives. To prove her loyalty, she had to act in this way. The Duke realized that she wanted reciprocity for her understanding. After Diana became the successor, she was literally inundated with gifts. Because of this, many stores in the city sold out of all their goods. Shies was concerned about the girl's appearance, so he constantly monitored everything. Kana helped with the kidnapping and asked to be left in the house as a reward. She had nowhere to go after her father's betrayal, so the Duke took pity on her. He allowed the girl to live in another mansion on the outskirts of the capital. She saved the Duke's granddaughter that night, so he gave her a suitable place and closed the matter. Diana was traveling to the capital on the only road, so she was assigned to take the girl to her new home. For this reason, when she arrived in the capital, she had to accompany Kana. The girl was worried about Lucas, who remained in the Winter Mansion. There was absolutely nothing that could be done, because the mansion could not be left empty. The hero also ordered his descendants to firmly defend the Winter Mansion. His Highness personally invited the Duke, so he could not stay at home. Shies must be present to see Diana's progress in dancing, and Baratheon came as an assistant and bodyguard, because the Duke asked him to. The old man was worried that too many people were targeting his granddaughter lately. A few days later, Diana received an invitation from the princess to tea. She thought her brothers would be happy, but they turned out to be scared. They ordered that the invitation be immediately thrown away or even burned on the spot. They were afraid that she would step on the same rake as Lucas. The princess fell in love with Lucas at a party and followed him around for several years. After the refusal, she wanted to harm their brother, which greatly interfered with everyone. They mentioned Lucas so often that he was constantly sneezing while sitting at home. Diana thought that the invitation would enhance the reputation of the Duke's successor. Shies looked closely at the girl and noticed that she had great ambitions. Diana chalked it up to the fact that she just wanted to go to the party without being discovered. She just wanted her grandfather to want to see her again. Now he was giving her the wrong kind of important work that a successor should do. Diana wanted to be an accepted grandfather and do a normal job so that her plan would work. Suddenly, Shisi grabbed his brother and reminded him of Lucas's words about listening carefully to orders. Before leaving, he was worried that the girl had low self-esteem because of her past. She tries in every way to prove herself, as if she is not good enough. So the guy wanted the girl to be able to do whatever she wanted. The brothers remembered this conversation and looked closely at Diana. Although the girl was suspicious, they decided it was worth trying to attend the tea party. At that very second, Diana signed the invitation and asked Marina to send it back. The heroine went to the princess for tea, accompanied by her brothers. Men were not allowed in, so the twins waited in another room. A dazzlingly beautiful stranger approached Diana, whom she recognized as the princess. The girl thought it was time to show the results of her brother's special training. She bowed and thanked Princess Ella for the honor and invitation to this place. Ella considered this a stroke of luck, as the Asenov family was famous for not responding to invitations. After this, the princess escorted Diana to her seat and asked her to sit down. The heroine immediately felt a warlike mood and prepared to pass the test. Princess Ella was confused, because Diana Asenov was different from what she had heard. She thought that some simpleton would come, because her granddaughter was picked up in the slums. But instead, Diana behaved very refinedly and knew her manners well. She had elegant gestures for someone who, until recently, had been a commoner. Besides, it was impossible to criticize her even for her taste in clothes. Ella wanted to show Lucas the true nature of his sister. The girl noticed that the tea was brewed from special tea leaves that grow only in July. Therefore, their taste may be a little unfamiliar to northerners. The princess believed that the modest northern simpleton had never drunk such luxurious tea. She hoped that Diana understood the meaning of her words and was angry. But Diana personally thanked the princess for the wonderful opportunity to try such an amazing drink. These words were incredible compliments that went straight to the princess's heart. Diana went on and on expressing her gratitude. The princess couldn't stand it when someone called her an angel. In the end, she admitted that the imperial family has a lot, so they must share. She achieved prosperity through love and abundance, so she follows traditions. However, Diana noted that this was a personal merit of the princess's generosity. She stated that Ella was like a goddess to her, who gave strength to the great commander. The princess simply could not bear this any longer and melted from the kindness of Lucas's sister. She even allowed the girl to take some tea leaves with her before leaving. All the other aristocrats watched their conversation with great surprise. This was the first time Princess Ella gave gifts to anyone. At the same time, the twins were in the waiting room in the palace. They were a little disappointed that the two guys were served sweet desserts. Baratheon didn't like sweets, but when Diana was around, He couldn't refuse the girl and ate them. Both brothers were worried about their little sister, because a lot of bad things had happened. They looked out the window and noticed a strange boy. It turned out to be the second prince, but he was dressed strangely and held a weapon in his hands. Baratheon was afraid that the prince might accidentally injure someone with his bow. Shice realized that in some ways his brother was right. Although they did not get along, they both agreed that the prince could pose a danger. In the evening, Diana returned home, and the servants brought several boxes of tea leaves from the princess. Marina was surprised that the princess gave the girl the famous high-quality tea leaves. Even the brothers noticed that the girl had appeased the princess well, since she had received so many gifts. Diana didn't understand their excitement, because she was an ordinary girl without any fighting power. The boys noticed that the little girl with a carefree face could say harsh things. The girl almost forgot to say that she was invited to the palace again. This time, Ella invited her on a boat ride on the lake. The brothers were worried when they learned that Diana would be going alone this time. Diana was happy on the day of the meeting, because it was her first time going boating. As Princess Ella had promised, a luxurious carriage was sent for the girl. In addition, the imperial palace was allocated for additional support. At the previous tea party, the princess asked whether Diana was being overprotected by her older brothers. Although they were worried about their little sister, sometimes their concerns went beyond the pale. Diana thanked the princess for not kicking out her brothers. All the girls envied Diana's relationship with her brothers, because they were the only children. Of all those present at the table, only the princess herself had 2 brothers. However, Ella didn't want to start talking about Rose in such a place. Diana noticed this and thought that the guys had a bad relationship. Suddenly, the princess changed the subject and invited Diana to go boating with her. She knew it was hard to make friends in the north, so she offered the opportunity. Although the princess was friendly, Diana had no idea what they thought of the north at all. Marina was glad that Diana had friends her own age. In her past life, she had never left the Misty Mountains, so everything was new and disturbing to her. Before leaving, Shisi gave the girl a ring with protective magic for safety. The first thing Diana did at the palace was go for a walk in the garden alone and meet a boy. Only thanks to the skills from her past life did the girl manage to return from his arrow. Diana couldn't believe that the child with the face of an angel was aiming at her. The guy wanted to approach her and explain everything, but he caught on a branch and fell. The girl offered him help, but he refused, because it was against the rules. Diana realized that she might have accidentally hurt this young man's pride, so she apologized and formally introduced herself to the young man. The boy immediately believed her words, because her famous purple eyes gave her away. He apologized for the late introduction and explained that he was the second prince of the empire, Roaz. Diana realized that she had heard this name somewhere before, but she couldn't remember where. A few moments later, she remembered that the girls at the tea party had called him a noble lily. The guy was clearly embarrassed by this nickname that the people gave him. The heroine was delighted by his innocent reaction and sudden embarrassment. Now she understood why there had been such a fuss among the other ladies. The young man changed because he shot the girl and almost injured her. The guy explained that he was preparing for an upcoming hunting festival. He didn't have as much power as his brother, so he made mistakes. The prince realized that his arrow had damaged the decorations on Diana's hat. He wanted to straighten them and carefully extended his hand to the girl's head. At that very moment, the ring on the heroine's finger perceived this as a threat to her life. The protective magic worked, and the prince was thrown back several meters. Shice cast a protective spell on the ring, but did not explain how it worked. Diana tried to save the prince from falling, but miscalculated her strength. Instead, they both fell into a lake that was nearby. Diana was conscious, but Prince Rose himself was in poor condition. The girl decided that the boy lost consciousness due to the shock of falling into the water. She realized that they needed to get out of the water as quickly as possible before it was too late. Diana tried to swim out, but her legs were pulled down, and even the flow of water was strange. She was in despair when her master's necklace suddenly reacted. Thanks to him, they were literally thrown out of the water onto the shore. Diana only remembered that at some point, the master's necklace began to shine brightly. Only now did she notice that the gray necklace had returned to its original blue hue. At that moment, the prince came to his senses and began to cough, spitting out water. The guards heard the splash of water and immediately rushed to the shore. The maid immediately recognized the duke's granddaughter, who had only recently arrived to visit. Moreover, at the most inopportune moment, Princess Ella herself appeared. Diana was afraid that everyone would think that she had put the prince in danger. She was afraid that the imperial family would not just sit idly by. The girl didn't know what to do in this situation. She was simply confused. The girl understood that this matter would not be resolved with ordinary excuses. The fact was that it was her ring that Shees had given her that had thrown the prince off. Everyone around asked the boys what happened and how they ended up in the lake. Diana knew she needed to be honest, so she was going to tell everyone about her ring. Suddenly, Prince Rose grabbed her hand and quietly asked her not to say anything. He apologized to the girl and admitted that it was entirely his fault. The prince lost his balance and fell into the lake, and Diana simply rushed to save him. She was a benefactor who did not say anything so as not to hurt his pride. The girl literally beamed with happiness because Prince Rose had just covered her. Even the doctor noticed that the young man was especially eloquent today. First, he ordered that the boys' rooms be prepared so that they could quickly change their clothes. Before leaving, the second prince asked the girl to forget about the incident. Diana understood that all this commotion was caused by the prince's arrow. However, she could not forget that an unknown force had pushed them out of the water. Moreover, the master's necklace unexpectedly changed color. Shies was afraid that the prince was bothering the girl, and that was why they fell. However, Diana reminded that all the circumstances developed precisely because of him. She explained that it all happened because of his ring and protective magic. The Grand Duke, who was worried about the children, came to their quarrel and noise. Baratheon immediately shifted the blame onto his younger brother and noted that he had not offended Diana. The girl explained that everything that happened was simply the result of overprotection. Shies was worried and gave her a ring with protective magic for her trip to the palace. The middle brother wanted to add that the guy had overdone it, and all expectations had come true. This made Shies angry, and he threw the plaster head at him. Diana explained to her grandfather that nothing special had happened. The prince tried to adjust the decorations on her hat. The ring threw them into the water, and he covered her. Now, the Duke understood why he had received an urgent letter from the imperial palace. He came to check why the imperial family apologized to him. The letter also included words of gratitude for Diana, who helped the prince. The boys didn't believe that the old man came just to check it out. In fact, he came to give the girl his gift. Diana untied the ribbon, opened the box, and saw a luxurious blue dress. There is not much time left before the imperial family's party. The girl was going to try on the outfit and show it to her grandfather. Although the ring was a bit over the top, the Duke praised Shiesei for her excellent idea. He only asked to be more prudent next time. The young man had not received praise from the Duke for a long time, so he was glad. A few days later, Marina informed her mistress about the arrival of gifts. They were delivered by a man who came from the imperial palace itself. Diana eagerly opened the first large box and was amazed at what she saw. Inside was a magnificent dress and matching shoes. The prince asked for forgiveness for the last time and sent the outfit as a token of apology for the ruined dress. Diana understood that the guy was very worried, since he even sent her an outfit. Now she had to choose what outfit she would wear to the event. Shies was afraid that the emperor would decide to marry Diana and his son. That's why he asked the girl not to wear the dress, even though it was a gift. From the time they were sent and the dress, the boy realized that the prince had sent them not only as an apology. However, Diana believed that it was too exaggerated to associate this gesture with romance. Shies was surprised that the girl was so far from history. Roaz had another mother of low status, so he was excluded from the throne from childhood. Although Diana was hearing this for the first time, everyone else had known for a long time. He had to receive a proper status and live in some village, or he could become the son-in-law of a prestigious family, which would be a better future for him. Diana remembered that Ella didn't want to mention her brother to the others. Shies thought that if the boys continued to see each other, Diana would become a victim of the emperor's plan. The girl never thought that there was a secret to the birth of a prince. All members of her family were not blood relatives, but they were equally respected. Although Marina noticed that before Diana arrived, this mansion was gloomy, the girl was deep in thought and didn't notice her brother entering her room. She had already gotten used to the fact that the young man never knocked. The guy heard that she had recently been sent a whole bunch of chocolate cookies. Looking at it, Diana couldn't believe that the mansion had been gloomy before she arrived. Looking at my brother from the outside, one could say that he was quite good. He was tall, fit, and quite handsome. Even the texture of his hair was good. Diana admitted that she was even a little jealous of his blonde hair. Barton didn't want to listen to this nonsense, so he picked her up in his arms. He didn't want to be bored, so he went with his sister to eat cookies from the bakery. At the Imperial Palace party, Kana wanted to ride in the same carriage with Diana. The relatives of the Asenov family received their invitations, so it was a joint evening. Diana was to travel accompanied by Shise, who had just finished his preparations. His twin brother was about to ride a horse and rushed after his grandfather. The young man gently pushed his sister and asked her to hurry. Kana, who never received an answer, was disappointed. Instead, she approached the young man directly and asked his permission to join. She tried to act nice and win his favor. Diana was afraid that Shise might agree. Then they would have to tolerate each other. Kana had clearly decided that she didn't need the superficial future duchess's permission. However, Shise immediately understood everything and asked permission from the girl herself. It is the successor who must decide whether to bring in relatives from the collateral line. Diana was confused by his concern, although she was happy. She advised Kana to get to the palace in her own little carriage. She had no choice but to thank him for his concern and step aside. Diana hoped that the road would be easy, after which she said goodbye to her relative. Kana was unhappy that her plans had failed, and she would have to travel separately. Diana hoped that everything would be okay, because she answered quite harshly. She didn't want this situation to cause more problems in the future. Shise was impressed by the skills and even thought that Diana had studied this somewhere specifically. Ideally, I should have just ignored her and left silently. But with Diana's character, one could say that she handled it quite well. Soon the boys arrived at the most famous gathering place of the nobles, where everyone was heading. Diana was impressed by the incredibly huge chocolate cake, which she couldn't wait to try. She was determined to have as much fun as possible and have a good time. The girl wanted to turn to her grandfather, but there was no trace of him. The man was so popular that he was immediately surrounded by a huge number of aristocrats. Diana even worried about her grandfather because of such attention. It was caused by the Duke appearing in public for the first time in 7 years. A huge number of young aristocratic women began to attack the brothers with their attention. They praised the bravery and achievements of one brother at last year's tournament, and then they admired the other brother's excellent taste and appearance. Diana had no idea that both guys were so popular in society. She still wasn't used to such a large crowd of people. Diana felt the air warm and mingle with the nearby sense of perfume. She began to feel sick when the girl found herself in a place with a large crowd of people. Shise noticed her poor condition and immediately approached his sister. He hugged the girl and asked the rest of the aristocrats to take a few steps back. The brothers protected the girl, which earned them even more praise from the girls. Some of them even suggested the fastest way to get to the open-air terrace. Although many were benevolent, the aristocrats looked down on them. Diana heard some people talking about her behind her back. However, they were sure that she would not be able to hear them because she was standing too far away. There were rumors that she, like her brothers, was picked up in the slums out of pity. Someone even laughed that the Duke had a hobby of picking up unfortunate people. The heroine's hearing had been enhanced by training from her past life, so she could clearly hear every word. She was disgusted that cowardly people who couldn't say anything to someone's face were considered nobles. She remembered a story she heard from her older brother Lucas. He suffered greatly from demons as a child, and that is why he ended up in this situation. Diana suggested that the twins also had a difficult past. She gently patted the boys on the head to encourage them. Shise looked very surprised and removed her hand so that the girl would not ruin his hairstyle. Diana thought for a second that the guy had figured her out, but then she calmed down. She understood his desire for neatness and love for his appearance. The girl praised them because she had heard how hard they both worked. Diana hoped that after this, their condition would at least improve a little. At such moments, Diana was sincerely worried and forgot that she was going to take revenge on the hero's family. Every girl at the event tried to treat Diana to something tasty. At the same time, they would always ask some fact about her older brothers. Diana felt like she was in an interrogation room. The girl could still see people whispering around her. Rumors spread like wildfire in this society, and now everyone knew about her. Moreover, the rumors were exaggerated, because she did not grow up in the slums, but in a small town. Everyone was allowed to express their opinion, but it was inhuman to laugh at someone else's misfortune. Shise couldn't take it anymore and told several aristocrats to get away from his sister. People caught gossiping wanted to get away from the limelight as quickly as possible. Shies advised Diana not to pay attention, because such people are everywhere. His attempts to protect the girl only earned him more adoration. Diana was angry that she was only asked about her brothers, and she had to answer. The role of the successor was to handle such situations well. The guy noticed that it was in such social circles that a girl could learn a lot. However, he did not quarrel with his younger sister and decided to restore her honor. He extended his hand to her and suggested that they take a short walk. Until the very end, Diana did not understand where the young man was leading her. Shies just laughed and kept it a secret, asking her to trust him. Soon the young people found themselves in the middle of the dance floor and began to spin to the beat of the music. Although Diana did not expect sharp turns, thanks to practice, she was able to stay on her feet. The aristocrats admired her brother, who danced well. The young man noticed that his lessons were good for the girl, and she danced well. Diana even wanted to praise herself for having endured his training. Her brother decided to play a joke on her and punish her for not watching her words. Suddenly, the young man put his leg under her and held her in a bend above the floor. Everyone around was amazed at how wonderful the brother and sister looked. Although Diana was wildly impressed, she still scolded him for such a surprise. She was pleased to receive praise from the guy, but she did not want to let him get away with his misbehavior. The guys got along well and found a common language. They enjoyed spending time with each other. After the dance was over, they went to the rest of the family, who were standing to the side. The gathering of the entire family caused even more excitement among the aristocrats than before. The servant announced that the imperial family was entering. Diana was excited, even though Shies told her not to even look at the second prince. However, the whole family was surprised when they saw Kanu next to the emperor. Moreover, the girl was wearing the very dress that the prince gave Diana. The little girl immediately realized that her relative was in her room. She was afraid that the prince would misunderstand if he saw that she had given her dress to another person. Kana realized that there couldn't be anything worse than rudeness, so she was happy. Diana realized that her relatives were once again trying to set her up. Besides, she was curious about when and how Kana managed to get into her room. The brothers noticed the girl's agitation and were worried about it. Diana could no longer afford to make a bad impression on the prince. She even thought that it would be better if she got sick and didn't come to the events at all. When she saw the prince, she realized that he had already noticed her outfit. She was afraid that he would be able to read her mind and find out that Kana had put it on without permission. The duke was finally free and was about to approach the emperor and greet him. The brothers were familiar with the man, so they greeted him almost simultaneously. The emperor treated his brothers well and was glad to meet the duke's granddaughter. Diana felt terrible, so she tried not to screw it up even more. She felt awkward when she accidentally met the prince's eyes. She was already happy that she had found a good friend, but now everything could go wrong. The girl touched the master's necklace and hoped that its power would help her. Just as she was thinking about this, Princess Ella appeared at the ball. She immediately greeted her new friend and invited her to taste the new desserts together. She admitted that she asked for these cakes to be made especially for Diana. She tried to pretend that she didn't do it because the baby didn't like it last time. However, she allowed her friend to take the desserts with her before heading home. Diana didn't understand why Ella didn't just admit that she wanted to give her a gift. The Duke took notice of Lady Kana as a relative from a sideline they had recently encountered. Diana was glad that her grandfather immediately drew a line and indicated that they had arrived separately. The Emperor followed etiquette and met the girl to whom he was introduced. She was glad that Diana had left the dress in plain sight and made a mistake. She was going to take advantage of this opportunity and turn it to her advantage. But as soon as the girl bowed to the Emperor, her dress came apart at the seams. Absolutely everyone who was in the hall at that time heard this. Princess Ella couldn't help but laugh, even though she was hiding behind her fan. All the other aristocrats at the ball followed her. Kana felt incredibly humiliated and insulted by this. The girl apologized to the Emperor and remembered that she had urgent business. After this, she immediately ran out of the room to escape the shame. Even though the princess didn't understand it, she really helped Diana out. The Emperor clapped his hands and asked everyone to forget about what had happened and return to the banquet. Diana was happy with the way things had turned out, even though she still felt awkward. Rumors reached the Emperor that the girl was close to the second prince. Diana didn't understand why she was suddenly asked about this, so she got scared. All this time, the young man stood next to his father and remained silent. Rose only reacted when the emperor asked him to escort Diana to the garden. He heard that the girl really liked the garden at their previous villa. Diana herself was not averse to going for a walk, so she asked the prince to accompany her. She admitted that she had something to say to the young man, even though her brothers were against it. The second prince could not refuse the girl's request and the emperor's order. Already in the garden, in a secluded place, Diana revealed the truth that Kana had stolen the dress. She apologized to the second prince again for everything that happened. The heroine even burst into tears, and Roaz had to calm her down. Besides, the young man noticed that he was not at all angry with her. He explained that he was upset because his request to become a partner was rejected. Diana didn't even imagine that her outfit could be assessed in such a way. The girl relaxed and took a deep breath, because now she didn't have to be afraid of anything. The prince was her first friend of the opposite sex, and she didn't want to lose him. The young man was very embarrassed when he realized that the girl treated him this way. Although he didn't deny her words, he still felt awkward. Moreover, he suddenly became interested in the necklace that Diana was wearing. From her, he learned that this decoration belonged to a man who no longer existed. Diana couldn't tell him about the master, so the boy thought it was from his parents. Although her parents were dead, she now had brothers and a grandfather. Diana reminded herself periodically that she needed to remember the place. She even admitted that, to some extent, she has a good relationship with her brothers. The prince realized that it was not so important to be related by blood for this. Only now did Diana remember that among the children, he was the only one who was not a blood relative. The prince tried to tell her something, but he couldn't start because of his embarrassment. He said something about a close relationship, but then he sneezed and couldn't stop. Diana even began to worry that it might be some kind of serious illness. A few moments later, a bunch of guards came running, quietly watching the couple. They decided that he had caught a cold again, so it was better for him to leave. Diana was surprised, because they fell into the lake together, but only the prince got sick. She hoped the boy would be okay when he was taken away. On the way home, the older brothers asked what had happened in the garden. They wondered why the prince was wrapped in a blanket on the way back. Diana explained that it was due to a worsening cold after falling into the lake. Shais was at ease, at least because their sister was much stronger. This meant that she was unlikely to die over some trifles. Thus, Diana's first visit to the capital of the empire came to an end. Soon everyone returned to the winter mansion safe and sound. The next day, Lucas intercepted his sister in the hallway and asked her to give him some time. Diana was afraid that she was about to have an unpleasant conversation. However, the girl was wrong, because she was finally entrusted with a worthy task. It was a secret for now, but Lucas promised to bring the documents after the meeting. Diana was happy, because now there was a glimmer of light in her plan. She rushed into her room and wanted to share the news with the demon as soon as possible. However, Blanche was furious because Diana left him home alone. The girl really didn't like the fact that he was shouting like that, because someone could hear him. The first thing she did was let him out of the cage and finally let him stretch his wings. She apologized to the demon because she thought that he did not need food and water. The girl understood that it was her fault, so she accepted the punishment. She realized that this couldn't go on for much longer, so she had to come up with something. For help in finding the relic, she promised to fulfill one of the demon's wishes. However, the girl did not expect at all that Blanche would want to get her blood. Then the demon explained that for him, there was no better alcohol than human blood. Diana didn't want to do it, but she couldn't help but keep her promise. It sounded pretty cruel, although it was precisely because of the demons that the war began. They agreed that the demon would drink no more than 1 cup of her blood. Only Diana looked up and saw that Blanche had turned into a human earlier and had come right up to her. He had been waiting for this moment for a very long time, so he immediately sank his fangs into her. When Diana opened her eyes the next time, she saw the master's face in front of her. She looked around the room and realized that she was in her old house. She decided that it was just a dream and memories of the master she missed. The girl remembered how she tried her best to surpass him. She apologized to the young man for doing something stupid. The master could not understand her words, and Diana did not know how to explain it to him. She just noticed that she did something stupid that made the teacher worry. Suddenly, he became serious and asked how many more deaths she needed to come to her senses. Immediately after this, the ceiling around began to collapse and fall on the girl. Diana didn't want the master to leave, but she couldn't do anything about it. One moment she was lying on the bed, and the next second she was already falling into the abyss. At some point, it seemed to her that she heard someone's voices. She opened her eyes and saw that it was the two twin brothers arguing with each other again. She heard Lucas's voice, but she couldn't move any part of her body. However, the girl was incredibly happy to return to this place again. She felt an enveloping warmth and a very familiar touch on her forehead. The heroine did not want this tender and familiar feeling to end so quickly. The girl even thought that it was the master sitting next to her on the bed. Diana thought that she was just having the same dream again, because it couldn't be happening. When the brothers saw that she had come to, they immediately rushed to her. They were very worried about the girl and hoped that everything would be okay with her. She suddenly remembered the moment when she first came to the Winter Palace. Diana thought that was why she felt so calm in her soul. However, they could not calm down, because a month had passed since she was found unconscious. Diana couldn't believe it and kept saying that she had only fallen asleep yesterday. She thanked the doctors for their help and released them from work. The man was about to leave when Diana called him master and asked him to stay. Only now did she realize that she had made a mistake that she shouldn't have. However, the brothers decided that the girl had not yet fully awakened from her sleep. They believed that she was undergoing some kind of training in her dream, which is why she said that. Lucas explained that Mr. Rien had agreed to be her attending physician and would not go anywhere. Although Shies was against this, he still had no equal. Although it was not his profession, it might allow him to stay in the castle for a while. Diana didn't understand how this happened and where Blanche had gone. From Lucas's words, she understood that the master had become the doctor who had awakened her. The girl wanted to first sort out the situation and talk to the Duke. There were many things she wanted to ask the master, but he was supposed to be dead. Diana didn't understand how a man who hadn't existed for over 500 years ended up here. She asked her brother's permission to speak with the doctor alone. The twins tried to dissuade her, but Lucas immediately realized that this was very important. So he took his brothers and went to his grandfather to report. Although Shies was not happy with this situation, he still decided to follow his older brother. He assumed that all his previous moments of doubt could lead to something. Left alone, Diana asked the master to explain what had happened. The guys still couldn't calm down and didn't understand why Diana wanted to stay with the doctor. Although she said that she wanted to discuss her illness with him, they did not believe it. Shies suspected the man because he suddenly appeared and easily woke up Diana. He woke her up with a secret technique, and before that, he wandered around different places for many years. None of the doctors could wake Diana up for a month, but he succeeded in doing so in only one day. The doctor said that the bird that their sister had picked up and raised was a demon. Therefore, the guys assumed that this wanderer was not just a man. He was incredibly strong, because even the great sage from the magic tower could not cure the girl. Shies was unhappy that he was being reproached for his mistakes. Meanwhile, Diana was talking to her master alone. However, the man pretended not to understand anything she was asking him about. The girl was angry, because it was definitely her master, but for some reason he pretended not to know her. The man continued to insist that he was simply a traveling doctor. Diana didn't believe him at all, because he could at least try to say his name. She wondered how far the master would go in trying to deceive her. She decided to provoke him and approach him informally. The doctor didn't care and allowed us to address him simply by his first name. As the Duke's granddaughter, Diana's first instinct was to send the Grand Master to the kitchen for cookies. The doctor did as she asked, and Diana found it amusing how easy it was to control him. Lucas was worried about his sister and was going to check the situation in the girl's room. In the corridor, he met a doctor who was carrying hot cookies from the kitchen. Lucas was very surprised, because usually his little sister did not behave like that with people. He called the nearest servant and asked her to bring Marina. Diana was upset because she could not find out the reason why the master was alive. When the door opened, the girl thought it was Rien with her cookies. However, she was very surprised when she saw Lucas and Marina instead. She immediately felt that the atmosphere was different from what it usually was. The girl felt a pang of conscience for trying to force the doctor to serve her. Lucas noted that if she needed something, she could ask Marina about it. Rien is not the type of person who should be doing such a simple job. The older brother did not want the girl to behave inappropriately towards the savior. Although Diana apologized for this, she did not understand why she had to listen to how she was scolded. At this time, Rien was reading a letter from the Duke in his room. Recently, His Majesty asked him to look after the health of this girl. They signed a contract on better terms and even allowed me to include my wishes. Rian glanced at it and concluded that it was a fairly standard contract. He knew that he was in the house of the descendant of the one who defeated the Demon King 500 years ago. He remembered a man who, a long time ago, had stood on his knees and asked for help. From that moment on, the master had no idea that everything would turn out this way. The next day, Diana looked for an excuse to invite the doctor into her room and interrogate him. However, she could not get any truth out of him. Marina noticed her mistress's strange behavior, but decided that she was unwell. She didn't fully understand what was happening to little Diana lately. The girls walked past the training ground, where the knights were located. Diana heard a familiar voice nearby, and decided to take a closer look. Just then, the Knight Khan appeared from around the corner, hurrying to his mistress. He was glad to see his mistress in good health after such a long illness. The guy admitted that his heart almost stopped because of his worry for her. Diana was also glad to meet her faithful knight, whom she had not seen for a long time. After the guy was removed from Diana's security detail, it became more difficult for them to see each other. The girl noticed that the young man's left hand was bandaged. He explained that he had overdone it a bit during his personal training session. He wrapped the bandage around it so as not to embarrass others and to cover the inflammation. The knight needed to get back to training, so he said goodbye to his mistress and ran away. Diana realized that Khan could not calm down because he was removed from his position as her guard. Marina said nothing to this, but only suggested that the lady return to the room. The master watched them from the window and noticed a suspicious glow of mana emanating from the knight.